Talk Radio.
Michamo apura kanu apurai kaitlu neye EGUA da medinde Odwirafo Kwesi ra Nehem Ptah Akhan Akwamuman Amaruka Atifi mu Odwirafo. That means greetings to all apurai kaitni people, meaning Africans, black people. Today is EGUA Day, Marketplace Day. My name is Odwirafo Kwesi ra Nehem Ptah Akhan, Odwirafo of the Akwamu Nation in North America. Yet I say we thank you for tuning in once again to the show. For the individuals who are on the phone line, if you have a question or a comment, simply hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. If you're in the chat room and you have a question or a comment, you must log in as a user in the chat room in order to comment in the chat room. If you don't have a username in Blog Talk, you can create one very quickly in Blog Talk so that you can interact in the chat room. And someone in the chat room just send a quick message. Just want to make sure you can hear us clearly. If you can just type that in real quick. All right. So for individuals who are new to the broadcast, we have 3 broadcasts on a weekly basis. On Joda, which is Monday night, we have Akan Nanasom, Ancient Authentic, Akan Ancestral Religion, and we deal specifically with the Akan expression of ancestral religion on Joda on Monday night. We deal specifically with our ancient Apurai Kaini expression coming from ancient Kani, a title of ancient Nubia. The title Kani, Nubia is the same title Khan or Kani, meaning the first people, the foremost people, but also meaning to count, to calculate, or to reckon, designating the people of ancient Kanat, the Kanit people, the Kanatu people, the Nubians, being the first people to exist on the planet, but also the first to calculate, to reckon, to count, and so forth. Khan, meaning to calculate, Khan, meaning first. A descriptive title of who the people are, the first people to exist, the first people to engage in the processes that lead to civilization. When some of our people migrated from that region and moved to West Africa, we reestablished the Kanat Empire. And the Kanat or Nubian Empire is the Empire of Kana or Ghana, which was established a couple of thousand years ago after the fall of certain portions of northern Kemet, and Kemet in general, as well as northern Kanat or Nubia. Some of our people migrated west, some migrated south, some migrated central Africa, some migrated west, reestablished the Kanat Empire, which is the Empire of Ghana, Akan civilization at the root. About 1,000 years after that, because of Muslim invasion, some of our people migrated from that region, which is near Mauritania now, Morocco and so forth, Mali, towards today's regions of Ghana and Ivory Coast, reestablished Akan civilization in that region over 1,000 years ago. And a few hundred years after that, some of our people were forced from those regions into the Western Hemisphere during the Musuo Kessie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. And this is how Akan people ended up in North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, and Europe during the enslavement era. Of course, we carried our ancestral religious traditions with us. Those who maintain those traditions are those who wage war against the whites and their offspring, freeing ourselves from enslavement, assisting others to be free from enslavement, and waging war to the extent that we brought down the entire slave system in North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean because of the wars we continuously waged against the whites and their offspring, powered by ancestral religion. That is a previously untold story, but it's now being told, the real reason that slavery came to an end. And of course, we did a broadcast on that, Nanasom and the defeat of slavery. So we talk about not only our transcarnational inheritance as Akan people on Monday nights, but specifically clearing up misinformation about cosmology, philosophy, ancestral religion in the Akan expression, the nature of Nyamewa and Nyame, the Supreme Being, the Great Mother and Great Father, Nyankumpon and the Yankunton, the Creator and Creatress, for grandchildren of the Supreme Being, the nature of the Abosom, the divine forces in nature, the spirit forces that animate the suns, moons, stars, and planets, and rivers, and oceans, and atmosphere, and fire, and thunder, and lightning, and so forth, the forces in nature, the so-called goddesses and gods, the Nananom Nsamanto, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, and their relationship to us. So we go into detail about that kind of information from the Akan expression because of the misinformation that has been propagated by not only Black people in the Western Hemisphere regarding Akan culture, but also those who have been infected with Christianity and Islam and Judaism and Hinduism and Buddhism and white culture in general on the continent, who have been infected with these perverse traditions, have bled these perverse traditions into the fabric and tissues of the ancestral Akan culture, and therefore when they present Akan religion is very often infected with Eurocentric nonsense, being promoted as authentic. So we deal with ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion on Monday nights, Joda. On Abinada Tuesday nights, we have Ojira for our broadcast, and that's Ojira means purification. It also means a celebration of purification. Those are the definitions in the Akan language, also in the language of ancient Kanat and Kemet. Ojira means purification and also a celebration of purification. So we purify concepts, purify philosophy, purify the knowledge of our ancestral religion and culture in general. Not just the Akan expression, but Akuraikani ancestral religion in general, no matter what expression it takes, whether it's Akan or Yoruba, Ebe or Fon or Fam, or Bakongo, or Notsi, or Chokwe, or Baluba, whatever it is, Kudu, Juju, Voodoo in the Western Hemisphere, whatever expression ancestral religion takes, we deal with that, clearing up these concepts, the nature of the Great Mother and Great Father, the Supreme Being, the nature of the divinities, the forces in nature, the nature of the ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated, and their relationship to us, the nature of the nature spirits and so forth, what happens after death, the ramifications of reincarnation, Bebrasim, and so forth, all kinds of topics that are related to our ancestral religious practice. Nanasom is a term we use as a general term for Akuraikani, or African ancestral religion in general, and in essence, that is the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. So that means that through ritual, we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual we reject those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject in order to realign our thoughts, intentions, and actions with order, to bring balance to our lives. So the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion, to the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. That is Nanasom. That is Akuraikani, or African ancestral religion. We always say that Ojira, purification, operationalizes Nanasom. Purification operationalizes our practice of ritually incorporating law and ritually restoring balance to our lives. Our entire culture is rooted in order, divine order. Nyamewa, Nyame Nshefe, the Supreme Being's arrangement or order. Our culture is the divine acceptance of divine order and the divine rejection or hatred or repulsion of disorder. That is our way of life, accepting order, divine order, and rejecting disorder. When you accept what you need and you reject what you do not need, then you can continue. When you consume food and extract all the nutrients from the food, but then you eliminate toxins, then you can continue. You can continue, perpetuate your life. If you accept foods and substances into your system, but you do not eliminate and destroy the toxins and the cancerous cells that develop and everything else, then you will eventually implode. You will eventually become corrupt and collapse. The structure will collapse. So the acceptance of order, the rejection of disorder, the expansive and contractive poles of culture, of Amamre. And that is what our culture is about. That's who we are as Afurakani people. And there are various expressions and means by which we align with order based on our makeup, based on our ancestral blood circles, which includes the migrations that we made and the interactions we had with forces in nature and so forth, and our unique expression of that Amamre, of that culture. So we deal with all of that in the Ojira broadcast on Tuesday nights, Benada, Abenada, and so forth. We clarify texts from ancient Kemet and other texts from various Afurakani ancestral cultures, whether it's on the continent, as well as our survival of our cultures in the Western Hemisphere. We talk about hoodoo, for example. The Akhan tradition is brought to North America by our Akhan ancestresses and ancestors. Vodou, brought to North America by the Fon and Ebe ancestresses and ancestors. Juju, brought to North America by the Yoruba ancestresses and ancestors into North America, not imported from Haiti, not imported from Cuba, not imported from anywhere else, but coming directly from the continent. We maintained our ancestral religious tradition intact, including priests and priestesses, priesthoods and priestesshoods in North America. And we deal with that as well. We have a transcarnational inheritance of ancestral religion and culture. And we deal with that in detail on Ojira Da, on Purification Day. And then, of course, on Wednesday nights, Awukuda, Akuada Wednesday, we have EGUA Marketplace. EGUA meaning marketplace. We deal with Afurakani businesses, organizations, and institutions that are serving the community in a positive capacity and also maintaining their ancestral religious values in the process and allowing those values to inform their service to the community. So we've brought on many individuals, organizations, institutions who are serving our community. We interview them. We have the various interviews in our archives. And what we have done in connection with that is publish, number one, our Okom economic development model. It's an economic development model rooted in Afurakani ancestral religious values, and the values of Nanason. So it's an approach in a holistic fashion to economic development rooted in our culture. We published that model. You can download that model on the Okom economic development page on our website. We will put that link in the chat room right now. For those who are listening on the phone, you go to odwirafo.com, ODWIRA, F is in free, O.com. That is our website. And when you go to the OKOM page, OKOM, you find this is what we're dealing with. So you see the Okom economic development model. You can download that model for free, of course. You'll see the 4-part series we did on the Okom economic development model. On Blog Talk Radio, we save those as videos. You can download that 4-part series where we dissect the model, and we also show how it applies to different aspects of our lives. We also have the video EGUA Kuti, economic warfare, as well as Kwarifo Ne Amamre, self-employment and culture. So those 6 videos are on that page. But then we also have a list of businesses, organizations, and institutions. Through the Okom economic development model, we have a strategy which we call Starve the Beast and Feed the Pride. That means we make an assessment on a weekly basis to determine what funds we would have wasted potentially with the whites and their offspring, and then we starve the beast and feed the pride. We take those funds away from those white businesses and reallocate them to the business, organization, or institution of the week. Through the Okom economic development model, we are targeting one Afurakani or African Black business, organization, or institution per week for 52 weeks. And when you look on the Okom economic development model page, you will see the list of businesses that we have already supported as a community. The reason why we're doing it in this fashion, because we are looking for optimal capital infusion. So of course, if you starve the beast and feed the pride, if you were going to spend $5 at Starbucks, if you were going to spend $5 at McDonald's throughout the course of 1 week, and you decided intelligently, I'm going to starve the beast and feed the pride. I'm going to take that $10 I would have wasted, and I'm going to starve that white beast, and I'm going to reallocate these funds and feed the pride, feed the business, organization, or institution of the week. That's a $10 infusion of capital. You can access their services, access their products, make a donation, whatever it is. Of course, of 1,000 of our people, many of us have thousands of friends on Facebook. Out of all these thousands of people that we're connected with, and many of us share the same friends on Facebook, but if 1,000 of those people starved the beast and feed the pride and took that $10 and reallocated it to the business of the week, then that would be a $10,000 infusion of capital to a Black business so that they can expand their services and their products to us, so that they can hire one or more of our people so they can have employment while they are serving us at a greater capacity, so that we can keep these funds in the community to enrich our community and build up our community and build up our institutions. If we do not do that, then by default, we are leaving that $10,000 in the hands of our absolute enemies, the whites and their offspring. That includes white Asians, white Europeans, white Americans, white Hindus, white Hispanics, white Latinos, white pseudo Native Americans, white Asians, and so forth. We're leaving the money in the hands of our absolute enemies by default. And therefore, we are financing our own oppression. So we starve the beast and feed the pride. And that capital infusion, by targeting one business, organization, or institution per week, they receive that infusion of capital, they expand their businesses, expand their services, hire within the community, and then the following week and week after that and the various weeks, then they can also participate in starving the beast and feeding the pride and supporting the next business of the week and the following week and so forth. So when you look on the AKONGUASUA Economic Development page, you will see the various businesses that we have supported as a community since February, since we started the AKONGUASUA Economic Development Model, Starve the Beast and Feed the Pride operation. So, and we also have an AKONGUASUA Economic Development Model page on Facebook as well. So you'll see that link there. And then you'll also see, and we'll pull that up real quick. We just wanted to push that. Okay, so you'll see the links to the websites of these various businesses. You'll also see the link, so you can go directly to their website, but you'll also see the link to the interviews that they did with us on the Blog Talk Radio program, the 2-hour interviews where they sat with us, talked about their background, their philosophy of serving the community rooted in ancestral religious values, how they develop their business, answering questions from the community and so forth, talking about their products and services, all of that. So you can get to their website. You can also get directly to the interview. And you see that list of businesses, and it's ever growing. This is week number 22 of the operation. And in fact, what we're going to do is the business of the week. We did put the link on the AKONGUASUA Economic Development page. So when you go to the page, you will see that. The name of the business is Asase Heal. It's owned by Ama Asase Ajay. We're going to have the sister on. We're scheduled to have her on next Wednesday, simply because we're doing this NKOMMO special broadcast tonight, question and answer session, which we have not done in a while. We've been teaching and bringing forth new information and on these various broadcasts. We do take questions and so forth throughout the broadcast, but we haven't had just a specific question and answer session on any topic that you want to have. So we want to do that tonight, and we've scheduled the sister to come on next Wednesday, but you can still go to the page right now, the AKONGUASUA Economic Development page. She is the business of the week, Asase Heal, nature blends for good health. So you can go to that page, you can support her business, Asase Heals. And we're going to also add that to our AKONGUASUA Economic Development Model page on Facebook later tonight. So you'll see it in both places. But right now it is on our website on the AKONGUASUA Economic Development page, Asase Heals. And of course, Asase means earth, talking about the earth mother in the Akan language. So just want to make sure we got that up there. Okay. So, all right. So individuals, if you are on the phone line, you can hit the number 1 if you have a question or a comment. In the chat room, you must log in as a user with a username in the chat room if you would like to interact in the chat room. If you don't have a username, you just came back on or just came on, if you don't have a username, then you can sign up for one and blog talk quickly so that you can interact in the chat room. So again, tonight's show, again, we wanted to open it up as just a call-in show, question and answer show. NKOMMO in Akan language, NKOMMO means communication. NKOMMO means communication, creating communication. Bo means to create or to make something happen. Bo NKOMMO, NKOMMO means conversation, communication, and so forth. So we wanted to simply have a question and answer about the publications that we have released. We've released 16 books to date on various aspects of Afurakani, ancestral religion, culture, truth story, philosophy, politics and economics, and various different things. We can go through them very quickly. The titles, Afuraka, the origin of the term. Africa is one of the books where we prove that the term Africa is directly derived from our ancient ancestral language and cosmology, Afuraka. Of course, we are the first to prove that of any scholars, black or white, and many of the books that we have published, the information that we have released, dealing with issues that black scholars as well as white pseudo-scholars for decades had not been able to uncover, not understanding the cosmology that undergirds these philosophies, these terms that we have, these cultural expressions that we have, and because we are engaged in the cultural practices, ritual practices, and so forth, we're able to get that kind of information, and also, of course, verify it through linguistics, verify it through genetic information, verify it through archaeological information, borne out through anthropological information as well. But it's always been part of the culture. So in many of the publications we have, we're uncovering and finally bringing truth and clarity to these issues that some of these black scholars as well as white pseudo-scholars have been grappling with for decades very often. Afuraka, the origin of the term Africa, is one of those publications. Modernity, divine law, love and divine hate, where we're showing divine order is comprised of two poles, divine law or love and divine hate, the expansive and contracted poles of divine order. We have Ubin Sheng, the ancestral summit, dealing with ritual practices and the nature and function of our ritual practices, whether it's shrine work or pouring libation, ancestral and deity possession, ancestral and deity communication, talismans, amulets, idols, shrines, nature worship, spirit possession, song, ritual dance, ritual prayer, all these various things we engage in, they have a function. We are receiving, processing, and transmitting energy in a measurable, quantifiable fashion. We don't engage in ritual practices for purely symbolic reasons. If we are not receiving, processing, and transmitting energy in a measurable fashion, in a quantifiable fashion, we are not engaged. So that's what the Ubin Sheng deals with. The Kuku Tumtum, the ancestral jurisdiction. We talk about the cosmological foundation of creation. We talk about Amen and Amenet, the supreme being, great father and great mother, Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress, Ka and Ka'et, the black substance of space. We talk about Afuraka. We talk about our nature of our relationship to plant life, animal life, mineral life, and other Afurakani, human life, the origin of the whites and their offspring rooted in their perversity, their disordered spirit, and our relationship to creation. And then we deal with the origins of the fictional characters of the Bible, Quran, and Talmud. We're the first to prove in detail the origins of these fictional cartoon characters, including Jesus, Yeshua, Isa, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Moses, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, Aaron, David, Muhammad, Allah, Yahweh, Buddha, Brahman. All of these characters are absolutely fictional cartoon characters who never existed of any race whatsoever. We have other books, for example, Ankh, the origin of the term yoga, and Kata, the origin and nature of the chakra, showing the term yoga or yunka, yunk comes from the term Ankh in ancient Kemet. We prove that conclusively. The term kakra, which is a term from ancient Kemet, is corrupted into kakra or chakra and so forth, and given a totally different connotation. And the same with the term yoga being a totally different connotation in the pseudo-discipline that the whites and their offspring promote. So we get back to reality. We have our book Kokobo, proving that dissexuality, homosexuality never existed in ancient Kemet. We have Anidaho talking about awareness, proving the origins of the terms God and Negus and Naga and Negro, Nigger, Nigga, Niger, all these different terms. We prove the origin of these terms. Of course, the term nigga, nigger, none of that has anything to do with God or royalty or any other nonsense that a lot of our people are promoting. We have Oberima Afurakani manhood, 7 principal values of manhood. We have Ptah, educational curriculum for youth as well as adults. We have NKOMMO whole life journal, constructing a whole life from the center of culture, talking about physical soundness and spiritual soundness from the center of culture, rooted in culture, talking about natural health and melanin and culture and philosophy, positive inherited ancestral attributes and characteristics that we can apply to our lives on a regular basis. We have the book, Kudu People, Afurakanu, Afurakainu in North America, Akan, custodians of Kudu from ancient Kudu Ndunu land, Kanik, Nubia, proving that Kudu is a term that not only found its roots in the Akan language, and we carried that exact same term into the North America during the enslavement era, the Musuo Ketie, but it also goes back to ancient Kanat or Nubia. In fact, a title of the land itself is the Undu land, and the people, the Undu people. It's like in the Akan tradition, Undu means medicine. Undu also means conjure, to conjure a spirit. This is why in North America, amongst Akan people, Undu or Hundu means medicine, specifically root work, root medicine, and the healers are the root doctors and the root workers and so forth. It means the exact same thing in the Akan language, that specific medicine, Undu, Unduru, and Undu is coming from the Undua or Undria, which is trees, roots, stumps, and so forth. But Unduyefo is the root worker. Undun Sinifo, the root worker, root doctor, physician, and so forth. The exact same thing you find in North America, the Hudu man, Hudu woman, the root worker, root doctor, and also the conjurer, because Undu also means to conjure. So we have that book, and we go into detail about that. And let me put a link in the chat room real quick. And if you have your questions, you can begin to hit the number 1 on the phone line so that we can see that your hand is raised. And as you're raising your hand in the chat room, just want to put the link in the chat room for the publications page so everybody can see that. And that is the NHOMA page on the website. So you'll see our 16 books, as we said, Afuraka, the origin of the term Africa, Kukutuntun, the ancestral jurisdiction, Maranechi, divine law and divine hate, the Okra complex, the soul of Akan, talking about the nature of the Ka is the soul, the divine consciousness, called Okra and Okrawa and Akan and Ori, Inu and Yoruba, Lido and Vodun, Chi in Igbo. We have Ubin Sheng, the ancestral summons, Oberima, Afurakani motherhood, as we said, the NKOMMO whole life journal, Kudu people book. We have the book More Means Dead, where we prove linguistically, cosmologically, and conceptually, which is irrefutable, that the term more means dead. And of course, we're the first to prove that conclusively. We have the book Anidaho, as we talked about, Kokobo, Yonkompon and Yonkonton, Ra and Ra'et, talking about the nature of the creator and creatress as grandchildren of the Supreme Being, and showing that Yonkompon and Yonkonton in the Akan culture are Ra and Ra'et, are ancient names for the creator and creatress. One of the titles of Ra, Ra-Ku, becomes Danku, Nanku Pong, the great Pong, Ra-Ku. This is what we're dealing with, and the same with Inyonkonton, Ra'et. Odomankuma, Atumukopa, and Tridriam Pong, Chere, Ra. This is talking about Odomankuma and Tridriam Pong being Atim or Atim Kopa, Atim Kepra, and Kepra in ancient Kemet. So the divinities are Atim and Kepra, 2 different divinities. They're called Odomankuma and Tridriam Pong. In the Akan tradition, we have a whole book proving that. We talked about the origin of the term yoga, Karakasa, the origin and nature of the chakra, the Ptah, which is an educational curriculum, and then Mate Masiye, the ancestorhood of Nana Yao, Dr. Bobby E. Wright. We're dealing with 7 principal values of ethical existence, associated with ancestral wisdom through the Adinkra symbols, and then we associate and show the parallels between that and the work of Dr. Bobby E. Wright, who was a Black nationalist psychologist who made his transition back in the 80s. Those are those 16 books. Of course, we have more books forthcoming. So this is what we're dealing with. So we just wanted to open it up for questions on any subject. You can hit the number 1 on the phone line now with your questions, anything related to those 16 books, or the other articles. We've published over 60 articles. Of course, this is the 165th broadcast on Blog Talk Radio. So any questions you may have had with regard to that, you can let us know that. If you're in the chat room, you can post your questions in the chat room right now. I'm just scrolling through the chat room real quick. And part of this process, one of the things that we initiated over the past week, when you look at the NHOMA page, the publications page, you see that we initiated and we added some new information on the publications page. So you see the 16 books. Of course, we have our NKOMMO distributor information document and video for those who would like to begin to work immediately. Working for yourself as an entrepreneur, you can become a distributor of our soft cover books. All of the ebook versions of our 16 books are free downloads. We make them free to the community because the information is needed. We also sell the soft cover versions, and they range between $8 and $11. Any order of 10 books or more is automatically 30% off. But if you would like to begin to work, we have an option where you can become a distributor of our soft cover books. We, of course, print our own books on our own printers in-house in color. We don't contract that out to a third party. So you can order the books wholesale, and then you can sell them retail in your area. The wholesale price is 30% off. So a $10 book like Aakhuamuman, the origin of the term Africa. And of course, the book is in full color with the images from ancient Kemet and everything else. And of course, the doctrine, the cosmology, the analysis. When people see that book, they say, oh, this is only $10. Of course, you purchase it from us for $7, and then you sell it for $10, and that's your profit margin, 30%. So you can begin to work immediately. We need to have options. We're talking about EGUA marketplace. Not only do we talk about this information and show how it's relevant to our culture, relevant to our people, but we need to be able to have options for our people. And one of those options, with regard to employment, self-employment, you can come to us and you can begin to employ yourself immediately, notwithstanding your prior work history. Eventually, when we establish our center, the AKONGUASUA Center of Learning and Healing and Training and Employment and Entrepreneurship, we will also have employment opportunities at the center. We'll be expanding our class offerings. We're raising funds for that center, that educational institution, and you can see that on the website as well. We will have employment opportunities there as well, especially with regard to the shipping and the printing and the publishing and the, with regard to the books and so forth. So we must have those options. Part of what we're doing tonight, of course, we mentioned this last night. We're having a mini fundraiser between yesterday and tonight. Tonight is the last day of our broadcasting week. So between those 2 days, we're having a mini fundraiser. And what we did was we have the NHOMA monthly subscription option. That's something new that we just started a little bit over a week ago. So some people just like to purchase the books. They may purchase the whole set or the first 10, and it's 30% off, like $66 for 10 books. Some people have purchased the whole 16-book set, which is just $105 for 16 books, which is less than $7 per book. Some people like to pace their learning, so we have an option. We have a monthly subscription option. We have 16 books right now. We have more books coming up. So if you like that option, and you can cancel it at any time, you simply, when you go to our page, instead of just purchasing the book outright, you would go to the donation button, a $15 donation, and making that a recurrent donation. When you go on PayPal and hit the donate button and you type in $15, there's a box that says, would you like this to be recurrent? You click a yes, and that means PayPal will send us a donation on your behalf every month for the same amount. So if you did that today, August 5th, then for $15, then September 5th, they will debit, $15 from your account. October 5th, same thing. You can stop it whenever you want. You simply go to PayPal and hit cancel, and that's done. But if you choose that recurring donation, say the minimum like $15, then every month you will receive one of our books on the same day. And if you say you kept it going for 16 months, for at least the next 16 months, you're going to receive a new book every month for the next 16 months. Or if you did it for $30, you get 2 books per month for the next 8 months. And by the time 8 months passes, we will have already published a few more books because we have a few more coming down already, which we'll have a couple of them out before the end of the summer. At least, most likely, three more books by the end of the summer. So, but it's up to you. You can stop that whenever you want. But this is a way to pace learning. At the same time, inexpensive, just $15 donation, and you receive a book. But you're also at the same time assisting us in our fundraising. We're raising funds for our institution. We're also raising funds for our free book giveaway. Sometimes people, of course, don't have any funds. For example, the sister we talked to the other day, we put out the information about the publication. She was really interested. She said, I have just had a baby. I don't have any funds right now, but in a couple of months, I will be able to purchase a book, and I'm really interested, and I'm looking forward to doing that. But of course, our response is, well, the ebook versions of all of our books are free online, so you can download all of them immediately. And she wasn't aware of that, so she was very excited. Most of our authors, what happens is if they're in that situation and someone says, well, in a couple of months, I'm definitely going to support your work because I'm really looking forward to it. They say, well, we appreciate that. See you in a couple of months. We have information that's too important to tell somebody, well, you can't have it because you don't have $15. So you're going to have to wait 2 or 3 months before you can find out the truth that Jesus and Muhammad and Moses, all these characters never exist. That would be unconscionable for us to do. So this is why we make our books free online. But then we also have the softcover versions, and this is our means of generating some income so that we can, cover all of our expenses and so forth. But we also have free book giveaways. Sometimes people don't have any funds and they don't have access to the internet. We want to give out those free books. We've given away over 350 in the course of a 12-month period. We also, whenever we go to a presentation in different cities, we give away a free book to everyone who comes to the event. And we do not charge an admissions fee at any of our events. That's our policy. So if you come out to hear us do a presentation, a lecture, there is no admissions fee. You don't get charged $10 to come in the door. It's always free. And in addition to that, you receive a copy of one of our books. So you leave with something that you can study. So it's not just a feel-good session, a rah-rah session, a preaching session. We go through this information in detail. We answer questions. We spend hours sometimes just on question and answer. And then when you leave, you have a book, whether you have funds or not. The whites and their offspring are giving away free Bibles, free Qurans to our people every single day, all over this country and all around the world, poisoning the minds of our people, poisoning the spirits of our people. So some of us must step forward and give away free publications with real information to crush that nonsense. And sometimes our people are so brainwashed that if they've never been introduced, they're already brainwashed against our culture. They think anything African is evil and corrupt and so forth. And you say you have some books, they're already against it. You give them, and then you tell them on top of that, well, it's going to be, our books only range between $8 and $11, all of them. So even if you say, well, this book is only $9, they're still, bristling at that. But if you can give them a free book and then they see the value of it, then they share it with other people and it turns other people on. They go to the website, download the free information, and they may come back later and purchase one of the other books and so forth to assist us in what we're doing. So that there's a value to giving out free books. People need the information. It combats the misinformation. It also awakens our people. They feel comfortable. They don't feel coerced into purchasing something. They're just given that information, and then they can ingest it. So this is the way we operate. This is part of our philosophy. So this mini fundraiser is allowing us to continue that process. So today is the last day of that fundraiser. So you can participate if you support the work that we're doing. If you benefited from the work we're doing, you can go to the NHOMA page on our website right now You can start your monthly subscription. You can do it for 1 month, or you can do it for 2 months or 3 months or whatever. Whatever amount you would like, that's up to you. $15 or more will get you at least 1 book per month. Just let us know in the comment section which book or books you would like to receive. So that's one piece. And of course, that's just one piece, the monthly subscription piece. But then another way to support, of course, you can make a donation. Of course, whenever somebody makes a donation of $15 or more anyway, we always give them the option to receive a book. Sometimes people just say, hey, I like the work you're doing. I'll send you $25. But we always give them the option. It's not just a free donation. We do appreciate that, but we will, if you would like to receive 1 or more books for that $25, then just let us know and we will send them out to you. So you'll get an immediate benefit from donating to us, which are books. And then the long-term benefit is you're helping us to establish our institution and spread this information, keep these websites going and so forth. So this mini fundraiser is all part of that process. Okay. Okay, so it's got a question, and let me make sure we didn't. Okay, so we did put the link. So it's the NHOMA page, the publications page on the website. So first question in the chat room, and again, if you have questions on the phone line, just hit the number 1 so we can see that your hand is raised. The first question's in the chat room. I've noticed that there are similar elements within Nanasom that are also within the law of attraction. Can you explain it from our perspective? So, you often hear about reading about in so-called metaphysical books or people just rehashing the same information, The Secret and all this other nonsense that was very popular for a minute. And they really weren't talking about anything unusual or brand new. And at the same time, they weren't really getting to the foundation. So of course, if you just have 2 magnets, the 2 polarities facing one another, the North Pole facing the other North Pole, they will repel. South Pole facing the other South Pole, they will repel. If you take the North and South Poles and place them near one another without touching and let the magnets go, they will jump together. So that's attraction, that's foundation. The foundational relationship in creation is the balance of male and female, coming directly from the great mother and great father, Amenet and Amen, Inyamewa, Inyame, the great mother and great father, who 2 individual entities who function as one unit, we call the Supreme Being, in order to bring creation into existence. And because we, as Afurakani people, African people, and only Afurakani people are emanations of Amen and Amenet, then with us, it takes the union of the male and female, 2 halves of one divine whole, in order to function as a unit, in order to bring life into the world. So that balance manifests in all aspects of existence. And this is why, whether we're talking about Afurakani manhood or Afurakani womanhood, the first 2 principal values, like in our book, Oberima Afurakani Manhood, 7 principal values of manhood connected to the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies which govern all cycles in creation. Those 7 principles are derived from those forces in nature that animate those aspects of creation. So it's a holistic set of 7 principles connected to the 7 days of the week. Spiritually, so every day of the week you have a principal value that you can focus on, because the energy of the day, animated by the divinity that governs the solar, lunar, or planetary body that governs that day, is operant. The first 2 principal values is order and balance. Whether it's Afurakani manhood or Afurakani womanhood, the first principal value of manhood and womanhood is order. Order meaning to recognize the divine order of creation, the balance of male and female. Meaning, in order to be fully actualized as an Oberima, Afurakani man, or Oba, an Afurakani woman, first you must recognize the divine order of creation, the balance of male and female, talking about Inyamewa and Inyame, Amenet, Amen, the great mother and great father. The second principal value is balance. Establish that balance in every aspect of your existence. So first, as a mature adult, you recognize first and foremost the foundational principle undergirding all of creation. Amen and Amenet are the author and authoress of all of creation. And there's a balanced relationship that they have, and that permeates all of creation in the real sense. So first, you must recognize that foundational reality. That's order. Second principle is balance. Once you recognize that divine balance, which is the order of creation, then you establish that balance in every aspect of your existence. And that is not only talking about when you get married and have children, but that expansive and contractive balance, these different poles of balance, whether it's inhalation and exhalation, whether it's consumption, food, and elimination of toxins, whether it's work and recreation, whether it's activity and, the waking state as well as the dream state, whether it's dealing with the fiery aspect of your emotional output or the cool, watery aspect of your emotional output, because that determines the way you interact with individuals, whether they're family members, friends, co-workers, and so forth, people in our community. If you can regulate in balance the fiery and watery aspects and all the temperaments in between, then you will be explosive at the wrong times, and you'll be, introverted at the wrong times and develop negative relationship patterns, which leads to suffering on different levels for yourself and maybe even for your children and those connected with you. So establishing that balance in every aspect of your existence. So those are the first two principal values of manhood and womanhood. So that's still going back to that attraction, the balance of male and female. But then we go even further when we're talking about attraction for our people. The difference between when we're talking about lower level magnetic attraction and trying to pull things towards you by focusing on the magnetism and all that nonsense they talk about, we are different. There's a difference between Afurakani people and all other individuals in the world. Of course, we are the only created entities in the world. Afurakani people. We're the only people created by the Supreme Being. Of course, brought into the world, created by the Supreme Being. All other groups manifested later as cancerous cells, a divergent of the original just a few thousand years ago. We have been here for millions of years as human beings. So we have a Krawa, a soul, a divine consciousness, a deity that was assigned to us pre-incarnation. So an ancestral spirit is in the ancestral realm, like your great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. It's time for her to return into the world. And her great-great-great-great-great-great-granddaughter is a grown woman. She's become married, and they're ready to have a child. And when they copulate and generate that energy to pull that ancestral spirit out of the ancestral realm and into the womb, before that takes place, that spirit is drawn up to Nyame, a soul, a divine consciousness, a deity, a spiritual force that will go and dwell and attach itself to the head region of the spirit of that great-grandmother. She's a spirit, and now she has an entity, a force in nature, a divinity in her head region, just like your physical body has an entity in the head region. It's the brain that regulates all functions in the body, has the blueprint for everything that takes place in the body, regulating order within the body. That little body is inside the head region of your great body. In your spirit body, there's a force inside the head region that is the spirit brain, which is the Okrawa, the soul, the divine consciousness, a deity in and of itself, a colleague of the other divinities. It's an Abosom, it's an Orisha, it's a Vodou, it's an Ntoro, one of the Ntoro two, it's a divinity. Amen directs that entity, go dwell with this person and guide them throughout their lives. That force in nature says yes, takes up residence and attaches itself and installs itself in the head region of our spirit. And you feel that pull in your head region from that divinity very strongly when you're going towards things that are in harmony with order. And you feel a repulsion in your head region for certain thoughts, intentions, and actions when you're stepping out of harmony with divine order. Because encoded within that force is the function you are to execute in the world. How you are to execute that function, the manner in which you're to execute that function, the kind of energy complex you've been given that's unique to you to support your divine function in creation. That's all encoded within the spirit brain, the Krawa. So you have a spirit body, which in Akhan we call Sun, in ancient Kemet Sahu. In the head region of the spirit body, you have the Kra, the soul, the divine consciousness. and then the divine living energy that's circulating throughout your spirit body, just like the heat circulating through your physical body right now, within the, within the oxygen and so forth. So the divine living energy circulating throughout your spirit body, seated in the heart-lung complex, but circulating throughout. That is the Ba, or the Ba'at, male and female. The Ba for the male, Ba'at female, called Obra and Akan. That divine living energy is the energy of Ra and Ra'at, the creator and creatress, the divine living fire and light moving throughout creation, animating creation, all created entities in creation. A little portion of the divine living energy of Ra and Ra'at is within your being as an Afurakani person, as your Ba. It is your energetic connection to the other Abosom in creation. The Abosom that govern plant life, govern the earth mother, govern the ocean, rivers, the various suns, stars, planets, black substances, space, moon, thunder, and lightning, so forth. The Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, the forces in nature, the spirit forces that animate the rivers, oceans, and everything else. Our energetic connection to them is the Ba, the divine living energy moving throughout us. That little portion, that divine energy, a portion of Ra and Ra'at animating us. That's different from electromagnetism. The whites in our spring have electromagnetism moving through their bodies and moving them, but they don't have a spiritual force, a little child of Ra and Ra'at moving within their body. They don't have that. We have that. So we have a divine connection, an energetic connection, a divine living energy filling up our spirit body, filling up our being. And that Ba, or that Ba'at, is connected to the Ba, or the Ba'at, the divine living energy within plant life, animal life, mineral life, other Afurakani, human life, and the forces in nature, and the ancestresses and ancestors, of course, and the Supreme Being. So we have an energetic connection through Ra and Ra'at that connects us with all created entities in creation, not the whites and their offspring. They are the uncreated, they are the degenerates. But that divine living energy is our attraction. That's the basis of our quote-unquote laws of attraction. We align our thoughts, intentions, and actions with our Kra, with our soul, our divine consciousness, and the divine function we are to execute. So then when we are about to do something, think, intend to do something, and we move forward, okay, I'm about to do this, engage in this activity today. If it's in harmony with divine order and we're aligned with our Kra, and therefore we're in harmony with divine order, then we have access to the Ba, the divine living energy. And we're given the energy we need to execute that function. And we're linked up to other Afurakani human beings who have that divine living energy within them as well. And we're in alignment with the energy of the Abosom, the forces in nature. And we're in alignment with the energy of the Nananom and Samafo, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, because we have aligned with order. If we take ourselves outside of divine order and move against divine order and make ourselves repulsive to the Abosom, repulsive to the agents of order within creation, then we cut ourselves off from that divine living energy. So if you can imagine, the air in your lungs is just a pocket of air that you pulled in from the atmosphere that surrounds the entire planet. So when you take a deep breath, the air outside of you is linked through your trachea to the air inside of your lungs. It's an unbroken channel. But what if you close your mouth and close your nose and hold your breath? Now the little air that's in your lungs is cut off from the great source of air that's surrounding. And you can't last too long with that, because now that living energy, that vitality has been cut off. And if you keep the nose and mouth or whatever closed, then you pass out. Or somebody kidnaps somebody and ties them up like that, and that's called suffocation, of course. And within minutes, the person is dead. It's over. Because the little portion of air that they had that used to be connected to the great source of air all around the planet has been cut off from that source. And now it's no longer a source of vitality for the person. When your divine living energy, your Ba that's circulating throughout your body, circulating throughout your spirit, a little portion of Ra and Ra'at energy, and of course Ra and Ra'at circulate all throughout creation, the black substance of space and all the suns, moons, planets, and everything else. When you cut yourself off by engaging in disorder, you cut your energy off, you have a little residual energy pulsating within you, and that peters out very quickly. You no longer have an energetic connection to other plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Aakhuamuman, human life, or the Abosom or the NHOMA Publications. So you can engage in that kind of attraction, attracting the Abosom to you so they can communicate with you, or engage in spirit possession, attracting the NHOMA Publications to you so they can engage in communication, inclusive of spirit possession. You don't have that attraction anymore. You've made yourself repulsive when you engage in disorder. And the only kind of spirits you can attract to you at that point are the kind of spirits who are on the same perverse frequency, which is spirits of disorder. And then you draw those individuals to you. Now, some of those individuals will do things for you to support you, and you say, man, I prayed for this, and it came to me. That must be God. In reality, it's some dead, drunk, criminal, ancestral relative, or ancestor or non-relative who's just trying to curry your favor by putting a word in someone's ear, or pushing something towards you, or getting you some money that you were trying to get, or helping you get this or helping you get that by planting suggestions in people's minds who are in positions to make decisions that will help you or hurt you. So once they whisper those things in those people's ears and they end up making the decisions that you were praying for, you say, look what God has done. Look at the power of attraction. That's really not what's happening. You're dealing with criminal spirits who are trying to curry your favor, and later on they will try to get you to engage in some kind of activity, sacrificing something, engaging in some kind of perverse activity to feed their energy. So the only real attraction is when you align with your craft. The energy within your being, your body, your bias, is now able to connect through Ra and Ride with other plant life, animal life, mineral life, the other Abosom, the forces in nature, of course, the ancestresses and ancestors who are cultivated. And then you begin to attract what you need to attract based on divine order, based on what your function is. It's not about, well, I just want some power, I want to do whatever I want, and all I have to do is engage in some little spiritual activity, some pseudo-ritual activity, and I can draw whatever I put my mind to and speak it into the universe, and it's going to happen. That's nonsense. People are engaged in little pseudo-religious practices. Only kind of spirits that they can connect with are the ones who are on the same level as them. Of course, the whites in our spring are always dealing with spirits of disorder. When we get out of harmony with order, the only people we have left to deal, just like physically, if you stop engaging in normal activity, you become a drug addict, for example. The average people don't have anything to do with you. The only people who are receptive to you are people who are hooked on drugs as well, and that becomes the kind of company you keep. And everybody else is shunning you until you clean yourself up. You become repulsive to everybody else until you clean yourself up. Spiritually, if you get out of harmony with order, you make yourself repulsive, like that magnet flipping its polarity and being repelled by the other magnet. You make yourself repulsive if you engage in disorder. You make yourself repulsive to the spirits of order. So there's no attraction there. And then you make yourself repulsive to the NHOMA Publications, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. There's no attraction there. So what kind of attraction do you have when you're engaged in disorder, including arrogance and lust and so forth, just lusting after things and trying to make things happen based on lust and not based on order? Only spirits you have attraction to are those who are on the same lustful frequency or malicious frequency. The whites in our spring call that the power of attraction and the secret, because that's all they're dealing with, because they can't deal with the forces in nature because they are repelled by them. So we must always focus on aligning our thoughts, intentions, and actions with our kra, our soul, our divine consciousness. Okay, so let me know if that answers that question. Okay, the next question in the chat room. How do we align ourselves spiritually? How do we know if we are? So we always talk about, in one of our broadcasts where we went and dissected a couple of our articles on the subject, the broadcast itself called NKOMMO, Ancestral Shrine Communication and Liberation. So we're talking about ancestral shrine communication, but we also associated that with liberation, showing that it was through our ancestral religious practices that we were emboldened and enlightened and darkened, so to speak, in order to get the information and the power to wage war against the whites in our offspring successfully and bring an end to enslavement. Those who maintain those religious practices. But we first start talking about the practices themselves. We always recommend in the beginning, the foundational centerpiece of ancestral religious practice is ancestral communication. It is our ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated, the class of ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated. You have ancestresses and ancestors who were criminals or, self-destructive and so forth. We do not evoke them. The only ones we evoke are those who are spiritually cultivated, the Nananom Nsamanfo, as well as the Nsamanfo Pa, the good ancestresses and ancestors. The Nsamanfo Bani, the spiritually disordered, deceased, we do not evoke. We do not pour libation to them, and so forth. They need to suffer for the things that they did while they were here. So, ritual centerpiece is ancestral shrine communication, ancestral communication, because it is through our ancestresses and ancestors that we receive the specific culture or the way of life that we need to operate within that cultural context. We are Afro-Akani human beings, but we are different. We migrated to different areas. Those who migrated to mountainous regions and interacted with the divinities that possessed them from mountainous regions, in comparison to the people who moved to a riverine area or a savanna area, interfaced with the forces of nature in that region and incorporated those forces in nature through spirit possession, that transformed the way they operate and relate to nature. It's still fundamentally the same because we're relating to creation, but there are nuanced differences, even with regard to diet, dietary taboos and so forth. Some people are allergic to certain things because in their ancestry, in their genetic makeup, because of where they migrated, because of the families that blended over thousands of years, they've developed a specific allergen to certain foods, whereas another group can eat the same food and have no problem. In the same fashion, there are certain societal and spiritual taboos that we have developed based on what we have done over the centuries and millennia as part of certain clans. So our ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated, who learn to live as part of these clans in harmony with divine order, those who achieve that, those are the ones who are assigned to us by the Supreme Being to help assist us in our development, to show us how to live in harmony with divine order based on the clan that we come from. This is why ancestral religion, dealing with ancestral shrine communication, is key. So, starting off, establishing a shrine for your ancestresses and ancestors who are spiritually cultivated. We have an article, NKOMMO, Ancestral Shrine Communication. And when you go to the Nanasom page on the website, you will see that. I'll put the link in there right now. The Nanasom page on our website. Nanasom, of course, means ancestral religion. You'll see the article, NKOMMO, Ancestral Shrine Communication. Then you'll see Nsama NKOMMO, Ancestral Shrine in Kemet. Third article will be Nsama NKOMMO and the Seven Senses, talking about the seven spiritual senses and the way that Nsamanfo, the ancestresses and ancestors, communicate to us through them. And then Odwirafo and Akwamuman, which also talks about some of that information as well. So when you see those three, and also in concert with the Ancestral Shrine Communication and Liberation broadcast, where we go and dissect those articles, this is where you're going to start from, and you get that information. But we always recommend first people listen to, when you go to the front page of the website, you'll see our introduction to the Akwamu Nation in North America, of course, who we are and all of that. Then you scroll down past that, and then you'll see all of the links to our various publications and pages and everything else. You see the link to our video page, the YouTube page, you see the link to our publications page, and then you'll see a section that says Adesua, and it's talking about self-study curriculum and communal study and reintegration. And we have our various links in order, step by step. And we also have the Nanasom study group page where we have our curriculum of our publications in order, step by step from the beginning. So people who are brand new to everything, out of the 16 books and so forth, which one should you read first? Which one starts from the very beginning, the foundation of creation and all of that? We have that in order on the page. You can go to either the front page of the website, you see that, but then you also see the links to the study group page as well, the Nanasom Feku study group page. Now what you'll see, when you go there, you'll see the Kuku Tuntun, the ancestral jurisdiction first. Then you'll see the Uben Sheng, the ancestral summons, that's the second link. And the third link is the Wabojida. And then the fourth link is the Nanasom link. So, we're just saying that when you go to the page, you'll see that. But we always say stars there, Kukusunsum, Kubin Shang, Wabojida, and then you get to the Nanasom link. And we reiterate that in that particular broadcast, Ancestral Shrine Communication and Liberation. But it starts off with dealing with the Ancestral Shrine, realigning yourself with your ancestral culture. And when you engage that process, you also begin to engage your own craft, your soul, your divine consciousness. Just sitting with even a few minutes every day. And we talk about that, in these broadcasts and so forth. A few minutes every day, it could even be 10 minutes. Learning the difference between when the force of nature in your head is pulling you, or if it's just a conditioning, or, an old conditioning, or if it's, an ancestral spirit, or, a belief or something like that. You begin to delineate the difference. Just like a child, when someone has a newborn, first, the child is just crying every now and then, the child cries. You don't know if the child is wet. You don't know if the child is sleepy. You don't know if the child is hungry. You don't know if the child is in pain. But as you grow and develop as a parent, you can begin to determine and delineate between the different cries. Where somebody else just hears the baby crying, you can tell if that's a cry for sleepiness, a cry for pain, a cry for hunger, a cry because the baby needs to be changed. Because you're tuning into the nuances, the difference. And the same is true when you begin to engage in Susu-Ho meditation with your own craft at your shrine. You begin to be able to determine the differences between when your cry is pulling you. There's a different sensation when the cry is pulling you and moving you in a certain direction, and when the Nsamafu are pulling you in a different direction, or the Abosom, or some discarnate spirit, or just you having memories and conditionings, old conditionings that are showing up, and you're feeling like habits and things like that move to do certain things. You can delineate the difference, just like you can learn to do that. But it's through practice, it's through, consistency at the shrine. So we address all of that in the NKOMMO Ancestral Shrine Communication and the related documents. So let me know if that answers the question. Okay, appreciate that. All right, so we have another couple of questions in the chat room. And of course, if you're on the phone line, hit the number 1 so we can see that your hand is raised if you have a question. And we're just going through the chat room real quick. Saw some number of comments. I want to make sure we didn't miss anything. Just scrolling back up, so just give me a second. Okay. Okay, there's one question. Number 1 is it's just pushed back down. Let me get back up to it. All right, is the free will concept a perversion of any of our ancestral concepts? So people will say, well, you have free will, you can do, well, depending on what people are saying, some people are saying, well, you can do whatever you want. If people are moving towards the idiocy of atheism, they're like, you can do whatever you feel like doing. There's no such thing as a supreme being and everything else. There's no such thing as order or morality. Morality is what you make it, and all this other nonsense. Some people will say that with regard to free will. Some other people will say, well, there's predestination and nothing you do is really free because you're always controlled by, what your destiny is, and that's all it is. And in reality, neither one of those concepts is real. So we have our spirit body, which is our Sun. We have our own personalities, forged by our experience over numerous incarnations, but also forged on what function we came into the world to execute. So every cell in the body has a specific function to execute. Bone marrow cells have their own form and function because they are to serve as bone marrow cells. Heart cells have their own form and function because they are to serve as heart cells, and the same thing with liver cells and spleen cells and everything else. We ourselves, as Aakhuamuman people, as well as plant life, animal life, and mineral life, cells within the great divine body of the Supreme Being. So therefore, we have a form and a function that's related to that, that divine purpose, life focus. That's how we are wired. Now, we do have the capacity to reject what we have been designed to engage in. if we don't reject that, we'll just naturally flow into divine order, and we're naturally drawn into functioning in harmony with divine order. The crowd, the soul, the divine consciousness, the divinity in the head region is always informing us and drawing us to engage in thoughts, intentions, and actions that are in harmony with divine order. However, if we reject that, because we're more drawn to lust or malice and so forth, we reject the divinely ordered thoughts, intentions, and actions, then we become disorder. Then we become self-destructive. No different than healthy cells rejecting their normal functioning and becoming cancerous. Then they seek to consume and destroy the other cells. So you can call that free will. That's what the whites and offspring will call free will. I'm free. To them, free will is being free from the constraint of divine order. Because they are spirits of disorder, divine order, morality, a moral code, moral rectitude is a constraint as far as they're concerned. For us, it's natural, harmonious, and it's a perfect fit. And anything outside of divine order, the structure within which we operate, that feels perverse and obscene. But for us, it's natural because we're part of the divine order. The whites and their offspring see divine order or rules and so forth as constraints. And if they can break free from the rules and do whatever they want, then they call that free will. That's a cancerous cell talk. That's their perverse culture. That's who they are. But for us, you're free to align with divine order. If you reject divine order, now you're placing yourself in disorder. That's not freedom. Then you constrain yourself to be enslaved by lust and, malice and everything else. So that's the difference with us. We're aligning with divine order, and that's a free-flowing energy. That's a universal free-flowing energy coming from Amen and Amenet directly to Afurakani people, plant life, animal life, and mineral life. And of course, Afurakani people only because we have a Ba, as we talked about earlier, Ba. But if you break away from that, being drawn by lust and malice, we don't consider that free will. We consider that abdicating our responsibility because we love our responsibility. That's law, that's order, that is creation itself. Okay, let me know if that answers that question. Okay, second question. Is the disorder known as Alzheimer's disease real, or is this an issue of spiritual disalignment? Typically what they find with Alzheimer's, as well as sometimes with Parkinson's disease and so forth, you have and you can check out, for example, the book Dark Matters or Why Darkness Matters. There are a number of Black scholars who talk about melanin specifically and neuromelanin specifically and talking about Parkinson's disease and so forth. The neuromelanin in the brain acts as a detoxifier in the brain, but if a number of metals collect within the brain, that leads to Parkinson's and Alzheimer's and leaves different things. For example, when we're using deodorants, since a lot of aluminum or people are cooking with pots with aluminum and all these different, metals, free radicals are getting inside the system, collecting up in the brain, and that's causing disruptions in the brain. No different than if you, disrupt the signal on a cell phone or in the past disrupt the signal on a television, putting, magnetism or other elements there, and it's disrupting the normal transmission. That's all that's happening. Things are misfiring because, the brain is filled up with, toxins, and transmissions are not being made between the synapses and so forth. And sometimes, of course, with drug use, that happens as well, like smoking marijuana. But so on one hand, very often what's happening with those kinds of neurodegenerative diseases is the introduction of free radicals and so forth, as well as people not being healthy and not nourishing those synapses through diet and omega-3s and everything else. And sometimes things can be reversed depending on how far along it is. It's like if somebody, you get injured physically, get cut or something, you can be healed, but if somebody cuts your arm off, that's a different thing. If, there's some damage and it's not so far gone physiologically, and through diet, people can transform certain things and begin to detoxify themselves. That's one thing. If it's gone so far, then that's another question. So very often it is physiological. Very often it's not just hereditary. Sometimes they used to think it was hereditary, but once they began to recognize that these toxins, these metals are collecting in the brain and oversaturating, then people began to recognize what's going on. But then sometimes when people are manifesting those kinds of behaviors, whether they may think it's dementia or Alzheimer's, and sometimes it's not physiological, then it can be simply spiritual discord. Somebody was engaged, aligning with these discarnate wayward spirits and so forth, and they're spending more time aligning with them than focusing on what's happening in the here and now. So they're not concerned about their hygiene, not concerned about what's going on around them, not concerned about their safety, because they're focused just like somebody staring at a television where somebody behind them is stealing something, or the house is on fire or something like that, and they're watching television and engrossed. Or somebody daydreaming, or somebody falling asleep. They're fully active, they have their capacities if they focus, but they would rather focus on what they're daydreaming about. People are trying to get their attention and they snap out of it. Some individuals are, quote unquote, daydreaming or removing their focus of consciousness from the physical world and focus more so on the lower level spirit realm, because that's where they want to be, because it's not as painful to focus on that as it is to focus on what's going on in their lives, and they just, quote unquote, check out mentally and spiritually. And then it's hard to reach them because that's all they're focused on. No different than somebody doing drugs and so forth. So sometimes it is spiritual discordance. If it's a spiritual illness, sum yade, spiritual illness, then of course that can be dealt with through ancestral religion. If it's a physical illness, honam yade, then ancestral religion and culture, we have medicine and things like that. Many of these medicines the whites and offspring use now, they learn through connecting with our people on the continent and other places, and began to replicate what they learned in laboratories and so forth, making generic drugs based on the plant life that they learned about from our people. So there's honam yade and sum yade, physical illness and spiritual illness. Once we determine which is which, then we can move forward. So sometimes those manifestations of dementia and so forth, sometimes really physical, problems, neuro degenerative diseases. So then sometimes it is a spiritual piece. Scroll down real quick. Okay, and that next question, I think we answered that question. You said, how would we reverse Alzheimer's disease? In regards to Nyame wa Nyame. So yeah. So if it was really, physical illness, then we have people, of course, who are naturopaths. We have people who are traditional healers and so forth. They know the medicinal use of herbs and plant life and so forth, and we connect with those individuals. Or if we're not in, connection with individuals, going to the Nsamafo, going to the Abosom, they will either direct us, just like they directed George Washington Carver and other healers and healeresses and so forth, of which plants to pick, which minerals to use and so forth to heal things. Or they will, through that ancestral communication, they will put us in the position to come in contact or quote unquote run into someone or some individuals who have that kind of information or are connected with a healer or healeress or whatever, who can deal with those situations. So either way, it's still going to the Nsamafo. They will either direct you or those connected to you to that kind of information that you can engage the process yourself, or put you in position to come in contact with people who have the information you need. All right. Just scrolling through the chat room real quick. Want to make sure we didn't miss those other questions. Do animals reincarnate? Yes, animals can reincarnate, come back into the world. I know you had a few questions here. What are your thoughts about predators in communities? And just want to make sure if this was related. I understand that when Aakhuamuman, which are spirits of disorder, the whites and their offspring, is taken from the physical form, they are stuck on our Sase in spirit form. Also, we can stop the Aakhuamuman from returning in physical form by not mixing our moja with their physical descendants, therefore giving them a portal to come back through. What I request to know is when we, hold on one second, when we eradicate the Aakhuamuman physically, how do we destroy them in spirit form from existence forever? So, talking about incarnation, reincarnation, Aakhuamuman is the term we use for the whites and their offspring, spirits of disorder. Chi means to hate. Aakhuamuman means things, objects, deeds, or entities that are divinely hated. That's the term for taboo. In the Akhan language, Aakhuamuman fo are the people, fo, who are taboo, divinely restricted, divinely hated, divinely rejected. The taboo people, these are the whites and their offspring. Then, of course, you have a few Negroes who become criminals and work with the whites and their offspring who become spirits of disorder as well. So, we've talked about incarnation, reincarnation. In the past, the brother was talking about how when we make our transition, the spirit separates from the body. Of course, the body is buried. Our people, we typically go to live amongst the ancestresses and ancestors in Asamando, in the spirit realm. Of course, our honorable ancestresses and ancestors, they operate in harmony with order. Realm, quote unquote, is repulsive of spirits of disorder. That means all of the whites and their offspring, for there are none of the whites and their offspring are living amongst our ancestresses and ancestors in Asamando, in the ancestral realm. Any different than if you have a strong household and somebody tries to walk them in your house, everybody will get up and crush them. If they're trying to break in, they'll take them out. They won't allow them in. The whites and their offspring energetically are not able to even get close. They are repelled just like the magnet is repelled across the table. So they can't get to that aspect or region of the ancestral realm. They can deal with their own deceased relatives in a lower level of the spirit realm. They'll be earthbound, hanging around, haunting houses, quote unquote, or hanging around the places where they died and so forth, or commiserating with other deceased, corrupt, perverse spirits who are just like them, off to the side and so forth. And then when it's time for, when they connect with their living relatives, then they'll be drawn back into their wombs and come back into the world. Our people, we're living in the ancestral realm, unless we were engaged in nonsense or we were suffering and depressed and everything else and anxious and disordered in that fashion, traumatized and so forth, make our transition. And some of our people are hanging around the place where we died, quote unquote, haunting houses, hanging around the places where we were murdered and so forth, or committed suicide, and the spirit will be hanging out there for a long time until somebody comes ritually to help assist them to move towards the ancestral realm. But typically most of our people, large percentage, majority, go to live amongst their direct ancestresses and ancestors and live there intergenerationally until it's time for them to reincarnate. When it's time for them to come back into the world and be a Bebra, they go to Inyamewa Inyame, they're drawn to Inyamewa Inyame. You know, that divine function is given to them through their cry. They're sent into a womb eventually and come back into the world. Now, the question he posed, based on that understanding, of course, is you wipe out the white offspring physically, and we do not mix with them, because if you engage in miscegenation, somebody foolishly connects with one of the whites and their offspring and they have a child, that child is either one of the Afurakaidi ancestresses or ancestors that is coming through the womb and being forced to operate through a mulatto body, but it's still an Afurakani spirit, same spirit from hundreds of years ago, so it's still Afurakani, even though it's operating through a weak mulatto body. Or it's one of the deceased relatives of that cracker that's brought into the womb, and now this white spirit, who may have been Irish or Scottish or British or whatever a couple hundred years ago, now this cracker is coming back, but because it's operating through a mulatto womb, body, coming through the womb and operating through a mulatto body, it looks like one of our people. And the foolish amongst us will say, well, if they're a mulatto, then they're really black. They'll say that like Obama, oh, he must be black. And in reality, he's a spirit from one of the white relatives' side. So he's a cracker operating through a mulatto body. Was a cracker in the past, and now he's operating through a light brown body, and we assume that he's one of us, but he's not. And he shows that on a regular basis. So once one of these white spirits comes through, and we've allowed and assisted one of the whites and offspring to be born into the world through miscegenation. And they're operating as wolf in sheep's clothing. But if he mentioned in the question, if we cut all of that miscegenation out, and through warfare and so forth, the whites and offspring are wiped out, they no longer exist, they're exterminated, and we haven't engaged in that miscegenation, so they're not reincarnating through a union, through a womb, because we engaged in, copulation with one of these crackers. Now the only whites and offspring that exist are those discarnate spirits that are hanging around, they're deceased, they're still hanging around and so forth for a while. But once we cut them off physically and cut them off with regard to miscegenation and repel them to that extent, it is at that point that then their perverse pseudo sun can be disintegrated. That's the time when that takes place. When we've broken off those quote unquote karmic relationships that have developed because we're still trying to figure out a way to incorporate them in our lives. When we cut them off totally spiritually, and we cut them off, of course, physically through extermination, then they are eligible for that disintegration. As long as we're trying to incorporate them, we're keeping them returning. That's the problem. So we cut them off physically, cut them off spiritually, and then, just like a cancer cell, you deprive them of their life, they can be disintegrated even as a spirit. Just like energy can be separated and so forth, they can be disintegrated. So let me know if that answers the question. And in fact, let me go to the phone line real quick, and then we're going to get back to the chat room. Okay, Michio, on the phone line, number 3358, you had a question or a comment? Number 3358, on the phone line, you had a question or a comment? Okay, just listening. Okay, let me check the next phone, number 208.
Question. Yes, my question, in regards to, you said about atheism earlier, did any one of our Afrikani people in the context ever in the history of existence even deal with it or know anything about atheism? Because that seemed like something new, now that I think about it rationally. That's my first question.
Okay, so, right. So, no, of course, none of our people are foolish enough to entertain some nonsense about atheism. The whites and offspring are incapable racially and spiritually of communicating with Amen, Amenet, Nyame, Nyamewa, the Abosom, the forces of nature, of course, the Orisha, the Vodou. They're incapable. So they don't have that capacity. That's number one. Number two, they recognize that we have that capacity and they do not. So they know that they're inferior physiologically because they're melanin recessive, morphologically and phenotypically as well, but also spiritually. They know they're spirits of disorder. They know we have something they do not have. We have a Kayat, a Krawa. They do not have that, and that is without exception. There's no such thing as, well, this particular cracker has a Ka because they're real nice. None of them do. That's what defines them. That's who they are. That's white Asians, white Europeans, white pseudo-Native Americans, white Hindus, white Hispanics, white Arabs, white Latinos, all of them. They're spirits of disorder. They have no anchor in divine order. They have no Kra, no Krawa. They do not have a Ba or Bayat, a divine living energy connected to Ra and Ra'et. They don't have that. So they can't connect to the Creator and Creatress. They cannot connect to the Supreme Being. They are angry over the fact that they cannot. Just like they're angry over the fact that they go out in the sun and they get skin cancer, and we go out in the sun and get energized, and they're trying to tan themselves and everything else. They despise our skin color because they don't have what we have. They despise everything about us because they know they're inferior and inadequate. In order to try to control the population, they put out different programs to do so. And it took them thousands of years. Christianity, Islam, Judaism, corrupting the ancestral religion. For those of our people who didn't fall for the corruption of the ancestral religion, they put forth this foolish notion of atheism, trying to get our people to stop listening to the Nsamanfo, to stop listening to the Abosom. And even though our people continue to hear the Abosom and continue to hear the Nsamanfo and continue to hear the Supreme Being, then they put forth this foolish notion that, well, psychologically, that's just, you're crazy, you have a mental disorder. We're going to put forward atheism that there's no Supreme Being, that's all myth. And then once you still have the experiences, because they know they can't just teach a black person that, hey, be an atheist, because we're going to continue to hear from Amen and Amenet and all the forces of nature. So what do they do to compensate for the fact that even though they can tell their people, hey, be an atheist, and their people like, yeah, there's no Supreme Being. I've never heard a Supreme Being communicate with me. I've never seen any deities. That must be true. There is, atheism is real. But then they realize with us, we're still communicating. That intellectual argument does not work because our people, our Nsamanfo are showing up. Spirit possession, spirit communication. So then they move forward with pseudo-psychology. And we talked about therapists or the rapist. And of course, the rapist comprises the term therapist. And there's a difference between ancestral religion and psychology, which is pseudo-spirituality. So we're still being connected with the forces of the nation and the supreme being. So therefore, they put forward in their pseudo-psychology that even though you're having these experiences, it's just a manifestation of mental disorder, mental illness. So some of our people foolishly go along with that. But in reality, no black person is ever foolish enough to think that there's no supreme being because we communicate with them directly. It's not about symbolism. It's not about anthropomorphism, which is idiotic. We do not anthropomorphize or come up with human images to represent our deities so that we can understand laws in nature better by personalizing them. That's all stupidity. When you hear idiots talking like that, then that means that they are following the whites and their offspring. They worship the whites and their offspring. That's their deity. Because if they were aligning with the actual Abosom and Orisha, Vodou, and so forth, they can describe to you how they look because they show up to us, they engage in spirit possession with us, they communicate directly with us. We know who they are. So when Negroes are talking that atheistic nonsense, deep down inside, they worship the whites and their offspring. No matter what they say on the surface, they can talk about black power and African culture and religion and spirit and everything else, but they worship the whites and their offspring. So then you can just dismiss them summarily. So that's what we would say about that.
And my second question, in regards to the oppression our people are facing now with more killings, not only amongst each other, but by the Odwirafo, does it come to a boiling point where like any caged animal that has to, has to take so much pressure, has to come out and attack with aggression? Does our people get to that point? That's my other question.
Okay, so what we would say is only if somebody has been enslaved or domesticated and enslaved mentally, spiritually, does it get to a boiling point, and at some point they begin to, explode. If they reject that conditioning, that mental enslavement, they don't have to get to a boiling point. As soon as the first thing happens, they're ready to take on the enemy immediately. They don't have to take on so much torture and so much pain to the point where they're like, I wasn't going to fight against my enemy. I tried to do everything I could to accept it and turn the other cheek and everything else, but it's just too much now. Now I'm going to explode. If we're living in harmony with order, instance of disorder, we seek to exterminate it, eradicate it, and eradicate the purveyor of the disorder. We don't allow it to reach a boiling point. So the only time it reaches the boiling point is when we've been so enslaved that we've been looking away and distracting ourselves from what's been happening every moment of every day for the past 300 plus years of our interaction with the whites and their offspring. So this is why it's important for us to realign with our our soul, our divine consciousness, realign with our Nsamanfo, get that proper direction coming directly from what's placed within us by the Supreme Being, align with the energy complex we have been given so we can fully actualize the energy we have been given individually and as a collective, so we can use all of our talents on every level to wage war against the whites and their offspring on every level. If we have proficiency with metal, then we utilize those talents. If we have proficiency with chemicals and, plant life and medicine and so forth, we utilize those talents towards chemical and biological warfare, creating weapons of mass destruction through simply going into the forest. Viral warfare, germ warfare, whatever it is. There's a precedent set by our ancestresses and ancestors who waged chemical and biological warfare against the slave masters, poisoning their food supply, poisoning their water supply, to kill them or make them ill enough so that we can kill them, burn down their plantations, and free ourselves and free our people. So whatever we have, intellectual warfare, physical warfare, metal armament, chemical and biological warfare, cyber warfare. Some people look at, this group, anonymous hacktivists and so forth, and people really don't know who they are because they say anonymous. Most likely they're still just part of the same process, the CIA and everything else, pretending to be something that they're really not. But there are Black people who have those capacities. There are Black people who can tap into or hack into certain systems and shut down a whole grid or shut down the system that the police are using and so forth. So people have these, capacities. They have this intelligence. They can use their strength in the various fields of endeavor that they're naturally inclined towards to wage war against our enemies. But it's always based on what is inside of your crop. Who are you? Align with who you are, then become led by your own Akra, your own Akrawa, become led by your NHOMA Publications, and then you don't have to broadcast anything. You just move against the enemy when you're directed to move. So when we engage in our own culture, we begin that process immediately.
And my third and final question in regards to mostly Aakhuamuman and the bloodline, wouldn't it make sense to remove also some of the mulattoes because they also can be potential placed as somewhat a threat of that same Aakhuamuman slipping into one, becoming one of them in a half recessive body when they have to go as well?
Well, this is why we would say we have to know what the identity of the individual is. And we learn that through our culture. The white culture can't teach you the identity of a mulatto. They don't have the capacity. They don't have that spiritual technology. They can't tell you who that spirit is. And when we follow their culture, if the culture that we're living in says if you have one drop of Black blood, then you're Black, or if you go to another culture, you go to Brazil or something, they say, well, you have a drop of white blood, then you're white. We're pulled in these foolish definitions by listening to our enemies. What is the real definition? How do you define who the spirit is? It's based on where they come from. We can define that because we can see who's who and who's not who they say they are. So like we talked about earlier, if you have a mulatto physiologically, a Black parent and a white so-called parent, the spirit that enters that womb is either, for example, if your mother had connected, instead of connecting with your father, connected with a cracker, and you were her ancestor, you're her great-great-great-great-grandfather, guiding her throughout the course of her life ever since she was a child, and she was pouring libation to you and communicating with you, and you were guiding her throughout the course of your life, her life. Then she got involved with other individuals and pulling her away from her ancestral culture for years, and she started falling into, general mainstream white culture, and she messed around with the cracker and copulated and pulled you into that womb, and then you're born 40 weeks later. Now you're a quote-unquote mulatto. But in reality, you're that same Afurakani grandfather who was guiding her. You don't deserve to be executed because you're still the same Afurakani spirit. It wasn't your fault that your mother made those foolish mistakes and copulated with the cracker and forced you to have a weaker body that you had to come through the world, into the world through. So we need to know who's who. The ones who are actually mulattoes, who are actually one of the white spirits who came through, they are our enemies. It doesn't matter how brown they are spirits of disorder. They are our absolute enemies. They're one of the whites in our offspring, like Obama, for example. But there are other individuals who are one of these Afurakani spirits, the Afurakani spirits who was returned, forced through a negative union, but they're the same spirit that they were. If they were killing the whites in our offspring in warfare, in Afuraka or on plantations 200 years ago, and now they're back, you can't say that that person is one of the whites and they just need to be taken out. So we need to know who's who, and we can only learn that through the technology of our own culture.
All right, thank you for answering my question, Madase.
Okay. Any out there that we appreciate the call. We have some more questions in the chat room. Want to make sure we did not miss anything. Just give me a second. Okay, there is, okay, a question well, a couple questions. All right. Actually, we moved past a couple things. Let me scroll back up real quick. Okay, one question. I have a question concerning the origins of the word Asia. I was going over the origins of the word Afuraka and got to the part of Leo Scipius. So Leo Africanus is one individual. Scipio Africanus is a different. Okay, so when they talk about Leo Africanus lived 500 years ago, and some people thought that sometimes they mixed him up with the Scipio Africanus who lived a couple of thousand years ago. Leo Africanus lived about 500 years ago and wrote a book called A History of Africa, and he was speculating on the origin of the term. Scipio Africanus is the one they talk about. Of course, he was Publius Cornelius Scipio. His father's last name was Scipio. His grandfather's last name was Scipio. His great-grandfather's last name was Scipio Barbatus. And when he invaded Afuraka, then he became known as Scipio Africanus. Because he invaded Afuraka, he did not name the continent Africa. When he invaded, quote-unquote, Africa, then he became Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus because he invaded Africa and won a battle in that northern region. His brother Lucius Cornelius Scipio, of course, had that last name Scipio. When he invaded Asia and won a battle in Asia, then he became known as Scipio Asiaticus because he conquered a region in Asia. He didn't name the continent Asia. His other brother did not name the continent Afuraka or Africa. They named themselves after the continents after they won battles in those regions. In our broadcast, one of our broadcasts here, it was a two-part broadcast talking about the origins of the term Africa and black and Moor and nigger and nigga and everything else in Hebrew and all of that. In part 2, we talked about the origin of the term Asia. It does not come from Asian. It actually comes from ancient Kemet. When you look in the language of ancient Kemet, just like you have the term Nubit, which is a region in South Kemet, the southern part of the country, Nubit. Later, the whites and offspring call it Ombos. So if you look at Ombos, but you look at the actual, indigenous name, it's Nubit, N-U-B-I-T, from the root Nub, meaning gold. And the Nubit people of Nubitu will later be called the Nubians. But Nub or Nubit becomes Nubia when the Romans use the term. That ia suffix that they add to it. So Nubit becomes Nubia. But that's an ancient title referencing gold, talking about the golden people of the sun and so forth, the original people and so forth. This is the land of the ancestors as an ancestor. Nubit is one of those titles, becoming Nubia. At the same time, the title Seat becomes Sia. Nubit becomes Nubia. Seat becomes Sia. Seat is a title that used in ancient Kemet to refer to Asia. So this is where the term Asia comes from. Asia or Asia, Sia, comes from Seat. Seat in ancient Kemet, and the Medusa and the hieroglyphs becomes Sia. And it's talking about to shoot for, but it's talking about an expectoration, release. Talking about an odor, a foul smell, urine and excrement and things like that. This is how they saw the people of Seat, or C2. They were unwashed, unclean, perverse, depraved, everything else. So the determinative using a organ with pus coming out, or a person urinating, or something coming out with a foul smell and so forth, something shooting out and so forth. This was the term Seat, dealing with that. And we go into detail about that in that particular broadcast. All right, let me scroll down real quick. That was a quick question. Let me know if that answers the question. Okay. How do I find an authentic priest in any African diaspora, such as Ifa or Sangoma shaman woman that can heal sickness or cancer? I'm in serious need of this and know it exists. the cure through our African heritage, but I'm running in, hold on one second to pull back down. Running into a lot of frauds or inexperienced people. And of course, that is a dilemma. And what we always recommend is starting from the reality that, of course, our ancestral culture is inherited through our blood circle. So we don't have to learn our ancestral culture from outside of our blood circle. In reality, all you can do is get some additional information, but it's within our blood circles, the culture is taught directly from our elders and eldresses and ancestresses and ancestors. Because many of our people do not have living elders and eldresses who are in the culture because they were brainwashed with Christianity and so forth, Islam, other white culture, pseudo-religion. Then we rely more on our ancestresses and ancestors, of course, as well as our own ancestral memory as well, but directly from our Nsamanfo and our shrine. What will happen in that process is if you do need to connect with someone, the more you engage your Nsamanfo, they will put you in position. The more you engage your spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, they will put you in position, in alignment to synchronize events so that you will come in contact with the kind of experienced healer or healeress that you need to come in contact with. Because as you probably experienced, and many people do, many of our people don't understand cultures. They don't recognize that our culture is a transcarnational inheritance. They believe our people didn't do anything and didn't preserve any culture because they followed that propaganda. They don't realize that we maintained our priesthoods here in North America as well. So they jump out and go to the Caribbean or go to South America. They go to the continent, and then people take advantage of them and take them for money and everything else. And many of those individuals have been brainwashed by Christianity and Islam on the continent and incorporated that foolishness in their culture, in their expression or presentation of our culture. Then there's control issues and money issues and everything else. And like you said, people are inexperienced, but when you deal with your own people, your direct blood ancestresses and ancestors, they will either give you that information that you need to take care of your problems yourself, or they will put you in position to connect with other individuals who actually have the information that you need. So it always goes back to connecting with your Nsamanfo and connecting with your own Krawa, your soul, your divine consciousness. Ritual. All right, so we're going to scroll through some more. Okay. And just want to make sure we didn't miss a question here. And also, when you look, for example, on our AKONGUASUA Economic Development page, for example, the first person that we interviewed talking about her business in Kingu Health is Dr. Atifi Adiro. She's a naturopathic physician, but she practices her culture through the lens of her ancestral culture, which is the Gullah Geechee culture, which is rooted in the Congo tradition and the traditions of Angola and so forth. So she practices ancestral religious tradition at the same time being a naturopath. Of course, she sells herbs and everything else. So she's you approaches healing in that fashion, not just the regular naturopathic physician, but approaching healing within in our cultural context. So you can contact her. You'll see her link in Kingu Health in apostrophe KINGU, Dr. Atifi Adiro. All right, and then we also had Mama Mawusi Ashakir of the Body Temple Institute. Her link is on our AKONGUASUA page as well. She is a healeress as well. They also certify people in herbalism. They also, have seminars. They also do homeschooling or natural bio-organic farming and so forth. But she's all about healing, and that's what the Body Temple Institute is about. So through those two resources, you can connect with individuals who can, get you to the point of bringing that balance that you're looking for. So Mama Mawusi Ashakir, the Body Temple Institute, and Dr. Atifi Adiro in Kingu Health on our OKOMMO Economic Development Model page on our website. Those are two of the businesses there. All right. Now we see some more dialogue in the chat room. I want to make sure we didn't miss one of the questions in the midst of the dialogue. Okay, Yeni Asera. And just give me a second because sometimes chat room information keeps pushing it back up, so we have to keep scrolling down. Okay, the tree language from the Togo region. The tree language is the Akan language, Ghana and Ivory Coast. There's some people in Togo who speak tree as well because they learned that, but people in Togo are primarily Fon speaking people and Ebe speaking people, practicing Vodun, of course. Major ethnic groups there, Togo and Benin. But there are some Akan people speaking people in that region, but then you also have some Fon speaking people who also speak more than one language, and you'll hear tree being spoken by them as well. All right. And I'll say for posting that. And that is one of the links. And I'll put the link in the chat room again. Because the Body Temple Institute has a Ning site, but then they also have their regular webpage. So we'll put that link to the Akon page, so you'll find the direct link there, as well as the interviews that they did with us. Okay, before we move forward, just want to remind people, because we have some questions on the phone line as well, and some more questions in the chat room. 6.5 minutes left in the broadcast as far as being online. If you want to listen beyond 11 o'clock, we'll probably go a little bit past 11. If you want to listen beyond 11 o'clock, you must call in on the phone line before 11 o'clock hits, because if you're just listening online, as soon as 11 o'clock hits, it will cut off online. But the people who are already on the phone, they will be able to continue to hear the broadcast past 11 o'clock. So if you want to listen past 11, you have about 6 minutes to call in. And we won't go too much past 11, but the number is 657-383-0635, 657-383-0635, and you have a little bit less than 6 minutes to call in to get on the phone line. And then for the people who came in a little bit later, we were talking about how yesterday as well as today is the last day of our broadcasting week for this week. But yesterday, if you listened to the broadcast yesterday and today, these 2 days, we're having a mini fundraiser for our operations. Of course, we have our free books. The 16 books are free online, but then we publish the softcover books as well. We have the free book giveaway that we do. We've given away over 350 softcover books. Of course, the Whites and Offspring are giving away free Bibles and Qurans every day of the week, every day of the year, all over the country and all over the world, wherever our people are, to poison our people. So we give away even soft covers of our books when we can. And we also have our free workshops and presentations, including Akuma Sa, Akuma Dine, Akuma Chora, overcoming substance abuse addiction through ancestral religions, ritual, overcoming domestic abuse and the negative effects of that and the negative spirits associated with that, so people can reestablish their lives in a harmonious fashion, overcoming intergenerational and transcarnational trauma, so people can restore their lives and so forth. We also have Oberima Afurakani Manhood training based on our book, Oberima Afurakani Manhood, where we give away free copies of the book to the young men as well as older brothers who come to that training so they can transform their lives in harmony with order. They have their own manual of manhood, the Oberima Afurakani Manhood book. That's one of our 16 books. So we give those away as well. So we're having a mini fundraiser. If you support the work that we're doing, any donation of $15 or more, we will send you one or more of our books. Just let us know. You can go directly now to the NHOMA page to make a donation. Of course, you can purchase one or more of our books just in general. That assists us as well. We have 16 books. They range between $8 and $11. Any order of 10 books or more is automatically 30% off. The first 10 books, for example, is $66 for a 10-book set. We have people who order the entire 16-book set. That's $105, basically $7 per book. Sometimes people order 11 books, 12, 13, 14, some 5, 2, 1 book. It's up to you. So any purchase will assist us in the work that we continue to do, including the free workshops, free lectures, and different that we pass out. We also have our monthly subscription option, which we just launched last week, and that is making a $15 donation on the website or more. You make it a recurrent donation, so you just click the donate button in PayPal on our website. On the publications page, you'll see that donate button. If you click $15, for example, and click the recurrent box where it says, do you want this payment to be recurrent? That means every month PayPal will donate $15 for you. You can stop it at any time just by going to PayPal and hitting cancel. But as long as you're doing it, then every month you'll be, PayPal will donate $15 for you or whatever amount you donate, and we will send you one or more books every month. So you'll receive a book in the mail every month. So for example, if somebody did a $15 donation and made it a recurring donation, then we'll send you one book per month. And we have 16 books. So for the next 16 months, you're going to get a new book in the mail every month on the same day. That's a way to pace your learning. Some people like to get all the books at one time, like a set of encyclopedias. Some people want to pace their learning, or some people, it's easier for them to pay a $15 one month and then the next month, get another book, and they don't even have to think about it. And that way it's supporting the operations and supporting the establishment of our institution, as well as our Oberima Afurakani manhood training. So this is the fundraiser that we're having, whether it's the subscription, you want to deal with that, or making a donation, which we appreciate. And again, any donation of $15 or more, you do have the option of receiving one or more of our books. So it's not just a donation, in return for that donation as a thank you for donating, or just regular purchases of the book. Any of those will assist us. And we're having that fundraiser. Today is the last day of our broadcasting week, so that's why we want to announce that. So please go if you support the work we're doing, and if it's benefited you, please go tonight. We're trying to make cover certain expenses for a couple of events coming up, so we need to get those expenses in place, taken care of, and also for the printing of more of these books, because we do all of our own printing and we print in color. So we're trying to get that taken care of this week. And this is why we're having this mini fundraiser. So any donation, any amount, we say, we thank you for your support of the work that we are doing. Okay, so we have another call on the phone line. We want to take this call. Me, Chiavo, on the phone line, number 5466. You had a question or comment?
Mikiawa. It started as one question, but it developed into three as you were talking. First and third are real quick. First one, the Aakhuamuman, have they always existed? Yes or no?
No. So Aakhuamuman just simply means a spirit of disorder. So the whites and their offspring haven't always been here physically. Of course, they haven't always been here spiritually. So just like cells in your body are healthy, but then 1 out of every 100,000 cells at some point becomes cancerous, meaning it becomes disfigured and no longer looks like the other cells, and it seeks to consume the other ones and proliferate, but then the immune system cells kill them. The same process took place when we first created. We're Afurakani men and Afurakani women. There were none of the whites in our offspring. They have only developed within the past few thousand years. We've been here for millions of years, so they have not always existed, and they will not always exist either.
Okay. Second question. This is my original question, because I needed to know that one thing first. Because their bag of tricks is very small. They have never been able to defeat us without us betraying each other, I guess would be a way to put it. So what exactly is it in, let's just call it the African-American community, that keeps allowing us to follow the path that's more aligned with their wants than following our own needs and wants in our own community. What exactly is it a spirit there, or is it the incentive to gain that we like? What is this that's causing this?
Well, it's simple. It's very simple. It's our not aligning with our own culture, and we have to recognize when you talked about their bag of tricks is very small. That includes the sleight of hand that they deal with regard to truthry or history. Because, and we've dealt with this in a couple of broadcasts, we've been conditioned to believe that the white man has been controlling us for 400 years or 500 years, or he's been ruling the world for the past 1,000 years and all this other nonsense. He's had the upper hand for about 100 years. Now, when they talk about how did they, enslave our people for hundreds of years, it must have been the fact that we were practicing African religion, and once Christianity came along, then all of that fell apart, and that's why they were able to enslave us for over 300 years, because we weren't doing the right thing. We weren't practicing a real religion. So they enslaved, millions of us over here. Of course, when we did our broadcast on Odwirafo and the, slave system in the Mediterranean, the Barbary Coast slave trade, you'll find that just like during the so-called 16th and 19th centuries here, they enslaved millions of our people in North and Central and South America and the Caribbean. During the 16th and 19th century, the exact same time period on the Barbary Coast, North Africa, and the Mediterranean, the black people, some of them erroneously referred to as Moors, as well as in league with white Arabs, they enslaved over 4 million primarily white Christians over the same time period. So while we were being enslaved over here, white Christians were being enslaved for nearly 300 years by the millions on the Barbary Coast. So if it was Christianity that was the reason why we fell to slavery, why didn't the Christians, why weren't they able to overcome enslavement by black people who are engaged in Islam as well as white Arabs? Why wasn't the Christianity able to enslave them? At the same time, those people black people brainwashed Muslims and so forth, who were caught up in the so-called Atlantic slave trade, why wasn't Islam able to free them from that? Because some of them got caught up as well. So it wasn't those fake religions that protected them. If that was the case, then if Islam was the real thing, then they wouldn't have been able to have been dominated by white Christians for a century. If Christianity was the real thing, then white Christians would not have been enslaved by black so-called Muslims and white Arab Muslims for 300 years at the same time they were enslaving our people over here. So that's a sleight of hand with regard to truth, because we simply don't understand that. We also haven't been taught that our people brought the slave system to an end through ancestral religion in the Western Hemisphere. It was through hoodoo and juju and voodoo and so forth that we were empowered to wage war against the white slavers as well as the United States government and the army. We talked about the Gullah Wars in one of our broadcasts, showing that we were waging war for 50 years against the United States Army, killing thousands of their people. So it was those instances that brought the end and forced emancipation and forced abolition. So that sleight of hand gets our people to believe that we've been in this condition for hundreds of years or even over a millennia. And if we believe that, then we will operate accordingly. And we'll sit around and assume that we have to, stay in this condition because we were sentenced by the gods to, be born into slavery and being taught a lesson. And then they teach Christianity to reinforce that nonsense. As soon as we embrace our culture, our ancestral religion, we break those bonds instantly, and then we begin to move in a harmonious, intelligent fashion, just as our people here in the past 100 plus years. Once they embraced their culture fully, then they immediately began to wage war against the white slavers and brought the end of enslavement. That's not abstract. That's literally in the blood of our people. We have direct blood ancestresses and ancestors who freed themselves from enslavement through ancestral religion and culture. Empowered by that, their blood runs through our veins. If they could do that 150 years ago, clearly we can do that now. We just have not been taught that. But as soon as we teach that, every time somebody hears that, it awakens them, and they change their entire orientation back to reality. And now they're focused on nation building, which includes the eradication of our enemies as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how, I just came from a family reunion. I just real quick to preface this. And I look around me and I talk to my family, and they're in line with learning the history, but they're not in line with activating it, meaning that they want to know the information, but they don't, now that they know these things, they're not in line with correcting the way this world is, or at least, reclaiming what's supposed to be ours. So outside of feeding ambitions, what would be a upright, a virtuous way to help realign my people, you know what I mean, with where they need to be going in their lives?
Okay, so the first thing is, it's a positive thing that you even have family members who are open to learning some information, because, have some people who are so conditioned that they really believe that they're not open to anything. So if it's not about the fictional cartoon character Jesus, they don't want to hear it, some people. And they believe that. And even some of them, eventually they will come around, but they believe that they can't stand to hear that at first. So the fact that they're open to hearing some true historical information, very often their belief about what true historical information is kind of limited, because some of the Afrocentric quote-unquote scholars, the kind of information they give, they may say, well, black people built the pyramids and black people started civilization and so forth, but then they give misinformation as well. They start talking about Jesus was black and Muhammad was black, and they're still re-enslaving the minds of the people and just putting it in blackface. If you're not telling people and proving and showing people that Jesus and Moses, Muhammad and Abraham and Allah and these characters never existed of any race whatsoever, if that's not part of what you're teaching, you're not really teaching anything, because that's what's controlling the minds of our people. On the outskirts, yes, they will say, well, black people never created anything and never built civilizations. And if you say, well, black people did build civilizations, people get a little bit excited. But what's controlling people is not the belief that we never built a civilization. What's controlling people is the fake religion, believing that fake God is the reason why we're in the condition we are in right now. If you remove that garbage, then you are doing something. And very often people say, well, I've brought them Afrocentric information, or we've been teaching African culture or nationalism, and the people still don't want to come around because they're still gripped by that fake religion. Even some black nationalists or Pan-Africans will say, well, it's okay, you can be a Christian as long as you're a revolution. If you're saying that, you're still enslaving the minds of the people. And because they were impotent in the face of the fake information, because they didn't have real information, they created a strategy based on their impotence against the church and everything else, and start saying, well, we're just going to meet them where they are, and we're not going to attack them. You build a whole strategy around your impotence instead of finding out the real information and teaching the real information. You're like, well, we're never going to get them out of this, so let's just do something else. That's insane. And that's what the whites in Orange Springs want us to continue to do. We come forward and say, no, we're going to get our people out of the churches, the mosques, and everything else. If the cracker can transform millions of our people into foolishness and worshiping them, they never stopped and said it's impossible. They spent 1,000 years working on it. You know what I'm saying? So we have the capacity to reverse that and remove it. So that's key. If they're not teaching the origin of these fake characters, then you're not really teaching our people anything. That's why we deal with the Kuku Tuntum first. And then engaging in ancestral religious practice. When they make that real connection, that's the key. So giving them real information that they never had before. They may think they had some Afrocentric information before, but give them that Kuku Tuntum, Uben Shane, Madanetchi, divine law and divine hate, and so forth. Then they get some real information. But then, so that's on the informational piece, and introducing the reality that they need to engage in ancestral religious practice. That's one part. But the other part is when you make yourself an example by you transforming your own life, engaging your ancestresses and ancestors, They see you're operating on a different level. That's attractive to them. Like the sister talked about the power of attraction. When you generate that kind of energy at your shrine on a regular basis, it becomes an energetic portal. It has substance. It has power. It has weight. When something has substance or power and weight, like the sun, the Aten, the Oriya, then it does not have to solicit planets to come join the solar system. It doesn't have to pass out flyers and say, brother, come on down to the solar system. It has enough weight, gravitational pull, because of its substance that it will draw these other satellites into its orbit. And when you consistently engage the NKOMMO at the shrines and so forth, it generates that kind of energy, that kind of substance, that kind of weight. And then they will be drawn whether they know why they're being drawn or not. And you're working on them even when you're not in their presence. And the NKOMMO are working on them when you're not even in their presence, awakening them when you're not even in their presence. So you're working on them when you're with them by giving them information and showing them an example of the culture you're talking about. But then when you're away from them, you're working on them when you're going to the shrine. They don't know they're getting hit twice. So that's the way we do that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeni Asera, and made us say for the call.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we just want to make sure we didn't miss any other questions in the chat room. We saw some comments and some conversations. We just want to make sure we didn't miss any questions. Okay, there was a question. I thought in the spirit realm we don't have gender or color. Now, that's a very important comment because, of course, there is gender and color in the spirit realm. Not only do they exist in the spirit realm, they originate in the spirit realm. The whites and their offspring want us to believe that there's no gender and color and we're all universal and we're all the same because they want us to be controlled by them. They don't want us to exercise divine order, which is divine law, love, and divine hate, the expansion and contraction of divine order, the expansive and contractive poles of divine order. So Amen and Amenet are the great father and great mother. That's gender from the beginning. And they unite as two halves of divine whole to create the universe. When the forces in nature move through creation, you have fiery forces in nature that move through creation, and they generate certain colors, those lighter colors, those yellows and reds and oranges, burning fire and so forth, the slower moving energies in nature, the nurturing, cool, watery type energies, the spirit mothers and so forth, they generate that those cooler, darker colors. This is why different Orisha and Abosom and Vodou and so forth have their sacred colors, based on the movement of the spirit through creation, through space. They generate a specific geometric forms, patterns and so forth, but they imbue space with their colors based on their movement in creation. So that's the generation of color, the generation of form, even their expansive and contractive potencies generate higher or lower pitched sound, and that determines their voices, quote unquote, their names and so forth. So they have names, they have gender, they have color. When you see an ancestral spirit at your shrine or wherever you are, you're not seeing a colorless, lifeless, genderless entity. You're seeing either your great-grandmother and she still communicates as your great-grandmother. You're seeing your great-grandfather and he still communicates as a male spirit, a fiery, expansive spirit, female, a cooler, more contractive spirit. So when people try to say there's no color and gender, once again, they're trying to promote white supremacy, the insanity of white supremacy. They want to control you. They don't want you to understand they are spirits of disorder that need to be exterminated. They want to figure out a way to force you to embrace them. But color and gender not only exists in the spirit realm, but it originates there. And we are just reflections of that. We're just a physical, condensing of that spiritual energy. So that's key. All right. And we address those issues in detail in our book, Ubin Shang, the Ancestral Summons, talking about the nature of the divinities, the nature of the ancestral spirits, the nature of color and geometric patterns in space and voices and, you know, gender and all of that in the Ubin Sheng, one of the pieces in the Ubin Sheng, the Ancestral Summit. So we have that book. That's one of our 16 books that we've been talking about. And then we also have a two-part video series that we did where we dissected the book in detail. That's on our YouTube channel. It's also on the Ubin Sheng page on our website, so you'll see that. When you go to the publications page and you click on the book Ubin Sheng, the front cover of the book, it'll take you to that page. You can download the book itself. You can order the softcover version. You can also see the two-part video series that we did on the book. All right. Okay, with regard to the ritual practice shrine building, the NKOMMO Ancestral Shrine Communication article has a basic shrine setup in that particular article. And then we also talk about it in that broadcast of the same name, NKOMMO. We go through that article in detail and we talk about that establishing of a shrine. Yes, so the other question was, we're going to produce a work on the Aboa and Kwa postures. Yes, we're still going to get to that. We haven't done it yet, but that's one of the things we're going to get to. And eventually we will have, when we do presentations, sometimes those presentations will be on that alone. So that's one of the other things we're going to have classes. When we talk about establishing the center and expanding our class offering, that Aboa and Kwa will be incorporated in that. So we won't only have the broadcast on a weekly basis, but we will have classes as well as ritual observances and so forth, all of those things happening at the center. Also a center for homeschooling activities and networking. So when you see the AKONGUASUA page, you'll see everything that will be happening at the center. But yes, we will be eventually putting a short video out dealing with that. Let me scroll up right quick. I think I saw something else. Okay. Okay, and there was and made our say for posting that. So we talked about, the brother posted a couple of our links we've separated out a couple of the activities that we have. So for example, we talked about the AKONGUASUA, which is the name of our institution. And we've had our institution for a number of years. We're working to establish a physical space for the institution in the DC area. We're from Chicago. We've been in DC for the past 6 years, so we're going to establish a physical space here so we can expand our class offerings, as we said. So we have a fundraising campaign for that institution, but we did separate out and make a separate fundraising campaign for the Oberima Apurakani manhood training piece, as well as the Coco Ball, eradicating dissexuality, homosexuality in the Apurakani community through ancestral religion. And yes, people eradicate these negative spirits that encourage them towards dissexuality through ancestral religion, repel them, and overcome that. We did a broadcast on that. In fact, we did a couple of broadcasts on that. The reason why we separated out these campaigns, so it's 3 campaigns instead of all in one, because sometimes our people who are just getting involved in culture, just learning about things for the first time, they haven't gotten to all the information yet. They may have just heard about the Akwamu whole life journal about melanin and, you know, our people building civilization, but they haven't gotten to the ancestral religious piece yet, so they haven't gotten to it yet, so they're still conditioned in that way. So they may be like, I don't know if I want to support an institution based on ancestral religion and culture yet, because they're still conditioned against that. But they see the value in Afurakani manhood or African manhood training, where every young male has his own book, his own manual for manhood, based on the 7 days of the week and the principal values associated with those 7 days. Every day of the week, they're focused on reforming and replenishing and rejuvenating and purifying and renewing aspect of their character every day of the week throughout the course of their lives, and reorienting themselves toward family life and harmonious living. They see the value in that, so we separated that out so we can receive the funding to support these Afurakani manhood workshops in different cities and give away these books. Every Afurakani male should have our book, Oberima Afurakani Manhood, that manual. So people see the value in that. And then the Cocoa Ball, eradicating dissexuality, homosexuality. The vast majority of our people get involved in that perversity because of child molestation, because of trauma, because of rape and so forth. When you can overcome those things and the negative spirits associated with that who will come to you and try to push you in a direction, away from the opposite sex and towards the same sex, and you assume that these sensations you're having must be your own, and in reality they are not. You repel those perverse spirits and you overcome that with ease. So people see the value in that. That's why we separated out those campaigns. We could have just had it all on the AKONGUASUA piece, but people can see the value instantaneously of eradicating the scourge of dissexuality that the whites and their offspring are promoting in our community. And they can see the value instantly, even if they haven't learned anything about ancestral religion yet, of transforming Afurakani men into, productive and focused Afurakani men. So this is the reason we separate them out. The brother put the link in the chat room, so we appreciate that. But again, for this fundraiser we're doing tonight, any purchase of any publication, and for the people who listen to the broadcast tomorrow and so forth, any purchase of a publication, donation, or the subscription, that helps us in the work that we are. Okay, so there's a call on the phone line. We want to capture that call, and then we're going to capture the last couple of comments. Okay, Michiawo on the phone line, number 0212. You had a question or a comment?
Michiawo, brother Kwesi, Akhan.
Mejosa.
Peace, King. I got two questions. And the first one is stemming off of the one where the individual asks if gender manifests in the spiritual plane. Are you always that gender in each incarnation, right? Are you always coming back as the same person? Like, I remember asking you a question, and just to clarify it a little bit. When an ancestor is returning, that is the same ancestor that is returning as the same male or female each time. It's not returning as a different person, or we could say, I am my ancestors. No. You are the same person in each incarnation. Am I correct?
Right. You are you. So if you make your transition, if somebody here, you make your transition, your spirit separates from your body. You're the same individual. And then you're in the ancestral realm for a while, and people may be pouring libation to you, and you may come to them in their dreams and try to console them or whatever. And that, that will happen for a number of years, and then you'll see, your children, grandchildren grow up, and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. They'll be pouring libation to you and saying, we remember when he did this and did that, and they're telling stories about you, and you're visiting them in their dreams. Sometimes you may possess them during an ancestral ritual. Somebody does divination, you may come and show up. You know what I'm saying? You're doing those things for years, intergenerations. A couple of 100 years down the line, you're still doing that. And then one of your great-great-great-great-granddaughters grows up and she gets married, and it's time for you to return. She copulates with her husband, and through that energy generation, after you've been drawn to Inyamewa Inyame to get your divine function, you are drawn into the womb. And 40 weeks later, you're born. You're the exact same person who lived here 200 years ago. You're the exact same person who was an ancestor living in Asamano, the ancestral realm, for a while, a couple hundred years. You have returned. You're the same individual. So when we see that child come out the womb, or even some women, they communicate with that ancestral spirit even before the ancestral spirit gets into their womb. And the sister that we had on the show a couple of days ago, she talked about one of her daughters, communicated with her before she even conceived. That spirit told her who she was and told her what her name needed to be. And then she conceived, and she found out she was pregnant, and she named the girl the name that she told her to name her before she got in the womb. So, and she has that name today, of course. So, Yes, with the same person returning and the same gender. Yes.
Yes, indeed, with the same cra and the same sum.
Right, but then you'll come through a blood circle, and you may have a different, specific, nuanced function in this particular lifetime. Maybe you need to carry a certain kind of energy into the world, but the world has changed a little bit, and your family circle is a little bit different. You still need to bring that fiery energy into the world, but it's nuanced based on what your family has gone through and so forth, based on your cultural context. But yes, you still have that divinity attached to your head region. You still come into the world. You still have that divine function.
Okay. All right, I made an
So,
for that.
just to clarify, you're not like a grandfather watching pouring libation, but then when the man and woman copulates and you get sucked into the womb, this time you come out a female. It doesn't work that way. You are a male in the spirit realm. You come back through, you're the same male. And that also cancels out this idiocy that some of our people are learning from the white star offspring, that all babies begin as women, and then they show little pictures of the, embryo and the clitoris and everything, and saying, all babies start out as feminine, and then they turn masculine, and some remain feminine. Pure stupidity, especially the ones, you can see that from somebody who's just following along with the white star offspring blindly. But people who claim to be spiritual and claim to be involved in culture, talking about ancestresses and ancestors, knowing that you can communicate with a male ancestral spirit or a female ancestral spirit, they come back into the womb. It's not, they were all female. They were a male before they even got into the womb. So they're going to make sure, and their energy is going to make the physical body, the physiology, align with the kind of energy that they have. So that just clarifies that.
All right. That does. All right. My second question is, one thing I've always had the thought of is, when you're receiving information, what part of your body is it affecting, right? And that's something that I love that you do with all of your breakdowns, is that you label the part of the body, whether it's the lymphatic system or the immune system or the liver system, the bone marrow system, correct? And as far as organization and our people coming together, Odwirafo, in recent retrospect of what happened with Sister Amakan Sankofa and Lelani Fafantoa, peace to our spirit. Just the whole community coming together with such distance in between us, but yet we're so close, right? We always seek to come together, organize, but yet at no time does the brain seek to go where the heart is, seek to go where the liver is, seek to go where the kidneys are. They stay where they are and they perform their functions. But yet individuals always want us to get together and million-man march for this and march for that and do this and do that. But yet my spirit has never yet urged me to get with them. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
no, I understand.
You understanding where I'm getting at, right?
Right. No, you were saying, no, I understand what you were about to say.
Right. Like, why do ones always want you to get together and march and peaceful protests and stuff like, when it really accomplishes nothing, when it's really the immune system that wages war throughout the body, divine hate?
That you answered the question, because it really does nothing. So that's when we talked about the sleight of hand and trucery and history and so forth. They've done the same thing. The attack against ancestral religion began when, of course, the white star offspring invaded our ancient ancestral culture. They couldn't defeat us militarily, so they began to try to corrupt the ancestral religion. This is the origin of Christianity and Islam and Judaism and Hinduism and all that garbage. They know none of those characters existed because they manufactured them based on corrupting titles of deities from Kemet. For example, Abraham and Isaac and Ishmael and Moses and Aaron and Muhammad and Jesus and all these characters. Their goal was to get us to stop listening to the Nsamafo, stop listening to the Abosom, and only listen to the white star offspring. So their goal was to make us believe there are no dead at all. And you can't communicate with the deceased. There's no such thing as ghosts, things, nonsense like that. And then when we still have those experiences, they'll either say that those are just demons or you're mentally ill, because they can't stop us from having experience. They'll scare some of our people so much that they won't have any experiences for a while. And they'll say, oh, well, yeah, those things are figments of our imagination. Until they actually have an experience, then they say, well, that means you're mentally ill or it's a demon. So, but the key is to get us to stop listening to our NaNoMa Nsamafo, listening to the Abosa. The NaNoMa Nsamafo inform us in Akwamuman that a hostage is defined as one who is not allowed to communicate with their relatives. So if you're not allowed culturally to communicate with your Nsamafo, you're being held hostage. That's what they want us to be. So we can't communicate with anybody. The only thing we can focus on is the fictional cartoon character deity and pull us all up under that one quote-unquote deity. That's that monotheistic nonsense. So that the interpreters of the voice of that fake deity is the cracker. So if we go against the cracker, we're going against the fake deity. And we don't have any other deities to communicate with, because you can't control a population if they can get a piece of wood in their house and a spirit takes up residence and says, go kill that cracker tonight. They can't control that, so they got to get you to not have idols or anything else in your house, any shrine, and all you can focus on is the one fake white deity and their interpretation. That becomes translated in the minds of some of our people who think they're Afrocentric or, nationalists or whatever, but they're really engaged in Eurocentrism and blackface, that Christianity is the one God, or Islam, there's no God but Allah and all sorts of nonsense, and one Ummah and all that foolishness, or Hebrewism, hear, O Israel, there's only one God, all this other garbage. It has been transformed into unity. All we need is unity. All we need to do is come together as one. All we have to do is forget all our differences and come together as one. Forget your culture, come together as one. Some of will even say, be Pan-African, forget all your nationalities and ethnic identity and just call yourself African, because all tribalism is the problem. No, tribalism is the problem for crackers, because we address our culture and we draw strength from who we actually are. That's like telling a crocodile and a fish, you're both animals, so just be animals. You live in the water, just be animals and forget about your identity. If a crocodile forgot its identity and tried to operate in the water the same way the fish does, he would drown, because the fish can breathe underwater and the crocodile can't. He has to understand his identity, his ancestral descent, innately, instinctively. When we embrace our actual culture, yes, there's nothing wrong with tribalism. Your organs are in different tribes. And as long as they do what they're supposed to do, because the structure is sound when they're operating independently but interdependently, then they're going to function in harmony and keep the body alive in a harmonious fashion, because the structure is already sound. So all they have to do is stay in their lane. If we're operating from a sound cultural structure, which is what our cultures are, we can stay in our lanes, and as long as we're functioning in harmony with who we are, we're actually supporting the whole at the same time. But if the heart says, well, I don't want to be a heart, I'm just a body cell, and liver say, well, we're just body cells, we're not going to limit ourselves to being liver cells, a part of one particular organ. We're part of the universal body. If all the organs start saying that, the body would collapse. Because they're not seeking to step outside of their actual identity that was given to them by the Supreme Being. The only people who seek to step outside of the identity that was forged in their nature by the Supreme Being is black people who've been brainwashed by Christ. So that whole one God, monotheism, come together as one under one umbrella and forget all your differences, that was the original assault on our culture, and it's been reprised by many misguided nationalists and Pan-Africanists and so forth, even saying one God, one aim, one destiny. Where did the one God come from? That's that Islamic nonsense. So Garvey wasn't trying to perpetuate nonsense, but he was when he said one God, one aim, one destiny. That whole chant towards we believe in the one God and trying to be proud of that, that was an assault on ancestral religion. That was the first assault. So every time we repeat that, we're repeating the first salvo against our culture. So we need to eradicate that and embrace the deity and our function in creation, and then we'll be naturally drawn to collaborate with who we need to collaborate with.
And I say that's why this Odwira is so important. This purification is so important. And we really appreciate it, King. Medase.
Yeah, I say that. And we appreciate your consistent support. Medase.
Ashe.
So, let me make sure we did not miss anything else. There was a question, per tribal identity, was it offensive wrong when tribes invaded other tribes? Very often when people did that, if it was an aggressive nature, they were just engaged in empire building. Yes, they did not have the sanction of the Abosom to simply engage and invade other tribes just to expand their territory. Once again, you have Negroes who think that they're Pan-African or think that they're cultural or think they're Afrocentric. They read our true story, read quote-unquote history exactly the same way the whites and their offspring do, and they say, well, you know, they were empire building, they were expanding their borders, and they became a great nation, and they dominated the other tribes, and they did this and did that, and that's just part of history. In reality, they're not really looking at the real social true story. They go to the ancestral shrines, they go to the shrines of the Abosom, the deities tell them not to invade. But then they're collaborating with white Arabs and trying to get some, you know, goods, or they're collaborating with some Achiwadifo, other Achiwadifo trying to get some guns or something so they can be more powerful. They reject what the shrines say and go and invade anyway. And temporarily, hey, they'll take over. But then that builds bad blood, not only with the people you've conquered, but with their ancestors and ancestors as well. And the NHOMA don't support you, and the Abosom don't support you, so the only spirits you have supporting you are the criminal type deceased who are just like you. That creates a great deal of bad blood, so then people coalesce who you conquered for a while, and then eventually they take you down. And then they don't have any problem selling you off to our enemies, the whites and their offspring, because you invaded them. So you're an enemy. So if the whites and offspring come and say, hey, I'll purchase this person who actually used to oppress you, you will sell them to them because they were your enemy. They were killing your people, murdering your mothers and fathers and so forth. And then some of our people end up in enslavement because there was internecine warfare between our people, and the prisoners of war and the convicted felons were the ones who were enslaved and sold off into enslavement. The whites and their offspring were not capable of just using their military and running up on the continent and snatching our people up and dragging us across the ocean. They were not strong enough to do that. They had to wait for us to be at war with one another and then seek to purchase the prisoners of war and the convicted felons and so forth away from the opposing group and then take us into enslavement. And of course, they armed both sides whenever they could and fomented these different things. Very often the cause of these this internecine warfare and intertribal warfare was because some of our people began to embrace over 1,000 years ago different aspects of the pseudo-religion of Islam, because they saw they could engage in lust and perversity, and if our culture was grounded in morality, and they saw another perverse culture coming in from the outside that said, hey, you can be a pervert, a lustful criminal, and that's the culture. You can live like that. Then the criminal element will go join up with them. Not that they really cared about the religion, they just had the quote-unquote freedom or the capacity to engage in lust and criminality. So they would join up with them and then attack the other black, relatives and so forth, along with the white Arabs. So very often these tribal wars that you see, you look back to the source, somebody was influenced by the whites and their offspring, their fake religions, their fake culture somehow, and that led to a number of different conflicts. So, but yes, and these instincts that we have, you have that proper instinct, even though you may have read true story trying to gloss over these things and say, well, this is just what true story is, you know instinctively that the forces in nature are the forces of divine order, and they are not going to support some criminal empire building just because somebody wants to be more powerful than a neighboring group. They do not support that, never have, and never will. They only support the kind of warfare that protects the people from outside criminal invasions, as well as criminals on the inside who have become cancerous and corrupt, to exterminate them. That's the only kind of warfare that they support. So Okay. Just want to make sure we didn't miss anything else. All right. Okay, so it's like 11:42, so we can end it here. Some of the, if we missed a question, this is what you can do. You can send us an email, but you can also look at our broadcast archives on YouTube, as well as we have this will be the 165th broadcast on Blog Talk. All 165 broadcasts are archived on the channel. This one will be archived probably within a half an hour after we finish. So you wait for about a half an hour and check back. Half an hour to an hour, it will be up, available for you to download, just like the other 164. Some of them we have also saved as YouTube videos on our YouTube channel. We are Odwirafo on YouTube. So you can get some of those there as well, and for ease of sharing and so forth. And these various topics that we have covered tonight and people have asked questions about in our books and articles and the broadcast, we address these different issues from different angles in detail. And we usually have a text that we read from that gives even more detail, one of our 16 books or one of our 60 plus articles. So if you have a question on those things, look at those different titles. For example, talking about miscegenation, we have a broadcast, Race and Identity, Nehem, Race and Identity, and Ancestral Religion. Then we also had a broadcast, Bebra Nesu, talking about who to accept and who to reject, talking about incarnation and reincarnation. We also had a broadcast called Bebra Sim, the ramifications of reincarnation. So those three broadcasts will answer those various questions about, interracial coupling and children and everything else. You can also shoot us an email as well. Because we collectively, that's probably between 8 and 9 hours of broadcast. The broadcasts are 2 hours each, but very often we go over the 2 hours. So those three, Nehem, Race and Identity, Bebra Nesu, Reincarnation and Race, and then the other one, Bebra Sim, the ramifications of reincarnation. And in fact, those three you'll see on the YouTube page. So when you go to check us out on YouTube, Odwirafo on YouTube, you'll see those three as part of the selection. Okay, and Medase, we appreciate that. We saw your comment saying you found a home here. Medase, we thank you for that. All right, so just want to scroll up real quick, make sure we didn't miss. I think we got most of the questions. See some comments here. Okay, and when we said, okay, yeah, the OCOM Economic Development Model page is where you find the links, and we'll put the link right back there in the chat room one more time. Links to the sister, Dr. Atifi Adiro, the naturopathic doctor rooted in culture, as well as Mama Mawusia Shakir, the Body Temple Institute. So Nkingu Health, which is actually the first link on the page, and the Body Temple Institute, which is further down towards the middle. On the OCOM Economic Development page, you will find them there. Okay, so, all right, again, so I'll say we thank you for tuning in. And again, please share the information with regard to our fundraiser, because we're trying to get those funds this week, today, tomorrow, and so forth, to continue these operations, whether it's the monthly subscription or just purchasing the books, or even if you make a donation, we'll still send you one or more books for that. Just go to the NHOMA page, the publications page on our website, and you can make your purchase of one or more books or a donation. And yet I'll say we thank you for that. We thank the individuals who have made some donations recently and purchased some books recently. And we thank you for all of the support, sharing the information. Please share this information with your contacts. If you would like for us to come to your region, your city, to do a presentation, just hit us up via our website. You can also check out our Akwamu Casa page, which hit us up on our website. Our email's on our website. We are also on Facebook as Kwesi, Akhan, which you can also type in Odwirafo or Afuraka, Odwirafo on YouTube, Odwirafo on Twitter, and Instagram. And we also have our own Ning site, Afuraka, and you'll see that link on our regular webpage as well. So, I say we thank you for tuning in, and Yebeshia Bio, we will meet again. That's it.